Check one, two, check one, two.
Perfect. I can hear you.
We are going to call this meeting to order. So while you get settled down, could we have the Vice Mayor lead the flag salute?
Please stand for the flag salute.
Para traducción en español, por favor escanea el código localizado en la última página de la agenda o puede escanear el código que se encuentra en la entrada aquí enfrente. Please remember to fill out, and I'll repeat this a couple times, please remember to fill out a comment card for public comment and return it to the front here, and we'll have it transferred over to the city clerk to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. The meeting is being live streamed on Zoom and YouTube, but we will not be answering Zoom or YouTube comments today. Submitted written comments will not be read aloud tonight, but we will include them for the record as every other public comment. Could we have roll call, please?
Alternate Commissioner Rodriguez,
Here.
Commissioner Stewart,
Here.
Commissioner Basso,
Here.
Commissioner Dinan,
Here.
Vice Commissioner Halterman,
Here.
Chair Taide Zamora,
Here.
Councilmember Call.
Here.
Councilmember Pimentel,
Here.
Councilmember Uribe,
Here.
Vice Mayor Fossey,
Here.
Mayor Hernandez.
Here. So we want to welcome everybody, and I think there are some folks that headed to City Council chambers, so we'll have some folks trickling in throughout the meeting here to tonight's special joint City Council and Planning Commission meeting. Tonight's meeting is informational, and it's an effort for all of us to inform you as residents as the process is facilitated. To access the presentation, you may scan the QR code located at the back. We are going to give you access to the PDF file, and I believe there are hard copies, or is it only the PDF?
There were a few hard copies of the presentation. I don't know if we ran out yet.
Okay,
I think
but
we're
we
out.
do have it available digitally. We are going to hear tonight from our Director of Community Development, Josh Mann, and Steve McMurtry with De Novo Planning Group on the proposed Riverwalk project. Again, public comment will be addressed at the end to give everyone an opportunity to write their public comment throughout the presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Josh Mann.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members of the City Council and Planning Commission. Tonight, as the Mayor stated, we have a informational presentation. Just a couple of things I wanted to go over on the presentation itself. The purpose is to provide information to the public, City Council, and Planning Commission. And that information will include an overview of the specific plan document itself, and also a summary of the environmental analysis that's been completed to date. Again, today's presentation is not meant to be sure. So today's presentation is not intended to be a public hearing. In terms of the project location, it's located north of Patterson Road, just east of McHenry Avenue. It's approximately 2 miles northwest from where we are right now. The project site is currently located within the City of Riverbank's general plan area. However, it's currently outside the city's limits and the sphere of influence. Just a little map I wanted to show about the project boundaries. So in terms of the location, it's a little bit hard to see, but the project is bounded by a red line. It's got a yellow dot throughout it. That line represents the area that would encompass the project area itself, and also the area where they're requesting a sphere of influence expansion. There's also a hatched area that denotes the specific plan area. So that would be the hatched overlay. The Berg Hill boundary is outlined in black. And also within that area would be the active adult community. The specific plan area itself encompasses 997 acres of this area. The overall project area is 1,522. Here's a graphic that shows the existing general plan designations for this area. Just kind of wanted to go over some statistic on this. The area that's designated for agricultural resource conservation makes up about 520 acres. The buffer greenway open space area encompasses 129.44 acres. There's a canal, irrigation canal area. These areas combined make up about 20.63 acres. There's also some land designated for civic use. This is a 15.79 acre area. There is high density residential of about 17 acres, low density residential of just over 319 acres, and medium density residential of 117 acres. Also wanted to note there's mixed use of about 51 acres. There's a multi-use recreational resource area, a little bit over 5 acres. 14.79 acres were designated for parks. And then we have the reserve area that's a little bit over 305 acres. Also included in this would be the rights of ways or public right of ways, and that is at 4.44 acres. All combined, this general plan area accounts for 1,521.41 acres. In terms of the application itself, so the applicant has submitted an application as requesting certain entitlements. These entitlements include a sphere of influence amendment, a municipal service review amendment, a general plan amendment, pre-zoning of the property, annexation request, a request to adopt a specific plan document, also an electric vehicle plan, vesting tentative maps, and a development agreement. The type of actions the council and planning commission and even city staff may see in the future would include a final map, improvement plans, grading plans, building permits, conditional use permits, and other discretionary actions. Just wanted to talk real briefly about the sphere of influence amendment and annexation for this application. As I mentioned, the red yellow line outlines the project area, and this also denotes the sphere of influence expansion area. Again, this is about 1,522 acres. The annexation is a smaller area within here, and that would encompass 997 acres and 4.3 acres of area along the southeast of the project area. Just also wanted to note approximately 520 acres are to remain outside the city limits and would be designated or would be classified as a reserve designation. But this area would also be included in the sphere of influence. And to kind of give you a visual idea, the 520 acres of the reserve would mainly be along the McHenry corridor. Here's a map. On the left-hand side is our existing general plan, and then on the right-hand side is the applicant's request for what would be the general plan amendment. I can go over the acreages real quick. So basically the bluff area would be considered 68.53 acres. The canal area 23.34. The River Park area is 69.77. There's some dual use parks and basins throughout the plan, and that comes in at 41.01 acres. The HDR designation is just a little over 10 acres. The low density residential makes up the bulk of the residential designations at 467 acres. There's a medium density residential at 78.7 acres. Combined mixed use areas are 67.71 acres. Parkland that's throughout the site is totaling 43.34 acres. And then again, the reserve area is 583.43 acres. And then lastly, the rights of way, or what would be the future roads, internal roads throughout the area, is calculated at 63.37 acres. Again, in terms of the application, one of the actions that we would need to do is called pre-zoning. So we would, as presented, the applicant's pre-zoning, the area that's hatched. This is the specific plan area that encompasses 997 acres. Most of that area would be designated for the specific plan zone. And there would be 4.38 acres located in the southeast project area zoned as mixed use. Again, 520 acres are to remain outside the city limits with unassigned zoning. Just wanted to go briefly over the specific plan document itself. It's structured with 9 chapters. This includes chapter 1's the introduction. Chapter 2 is the existing conditions. Chapter 3 goes through the Riverwalk vision. Chapter 4 lays out the land use and development standards for development within the specific plan area. Chapter 5 is an overview of the circulation and mobility throughout the plan. Chapter 6 addresses the infrastructure, parks, and public services. Chapter 7 provides guidance for design-related items. Chapter 8 discusses a community aging together. And finally, Chapter 9 discusses implementation and administration of the plan itself. In terms of the project objectives for Riverwalk, it's set up with various goals. Just wanted to highlight a few of these. First of all, goal 1 was to develop a mix of residential housing products to accommodate a variety of desires within the market. The second goal was to prioritize the age-restricted development as a vibrant community with diverse housing types and densities, allowing residents to age in place. Goal 3 was to develop a community core area that serves as a central community gathering area or gathering place for social interaction, recreation, retail services, and living space. Goal 4 was to promote health and wellness through extensive pedestrian and bicycle trails, outdoor recreation areas, and opportunities for social interactions. Goal 5 was to respect the natural resources, terrain, and character of the land by designing a residential community that highlights scenic views throughout the area. Goal 6 was to achieve a safe and efficient circulation system for all users and modes of transportation. And finally, Goal 7 was to highlight village identity while promoting community amenities throughout. And in terms of the amenities, I just wanted to briefly hit on a few. So some of the proposed amenities includes a clubhouse. When they talk about that core area, I think this is where that would be located. Also, in terms of having different modes of transportation, one of the items this plan hits heavily on is the neighborhood electric vehicles with plans for those throughout. Again, there would be a Riverwalk area, the community core, and then various parks and open spaces throughout the project site. This slide right here hits on the various land uses within the specific plan, kind of drills down a little bit deeper than the general plan designations we were discussing. Again, the yellow is the low density residential. This comes in at about 467 acres. Density of development within there, you would see development between 0 and 8 dwelling units an acre. The medium density residential is about 78.7 acres, where you would see development between 8 and 16 dwelling units per acre. HDR is 10 acres, and you're going to see a much more dense unit count in there with 16 or over dwelling units an acre. Mixed use could be commercial, could be residential, could be a mixture of both. But in terms of residential, they would also be similar to HDR, looking at 16 or more dwelling units an acre. Go to the next slide. In terms of the plan itself, it's set up with these different villages, and you'll notice that as you go throughout the document. In terms of the villages, they're all labeled with a letter. And I just wanted to highlight on this slide that if you notice, villages A and B would not be age restricted, as well as villages P, Q, and R. And to visually kind of give you that, those would be the villages that are nearest the, I'll call it the Coffee Road, Patterson Road area, the southern portion of the specific plan area. In terms of circulation, so this project itself will be tying into the existing transportation network, such as Patterson Road, Coffee Road, McHenry Avenue. They have proposed an internal circulation system throughout. Again, like I mentioned earlier, there would be neighborhood electric vehicles, planning for those vehicles to be used throughout the site, as well as pedestrian, bicycle, and transit. This slide here just kind of breaks down to the roads a little more detail. So you'll notice there's going to be various types of roads within the specific plan, and these are going to be internal to the project, and they would include the arterial roadways. These are roadways, they're heavily used roadways, typically 4 travel lanes, sidewalks on both sides of the street, including landscaping. Then we will get into collector roads. These are typically 2, and they could be four travel lanes total. Again, they would have sidewalks on both sides. Bike lanes were appropriate, as well as landscaping. And then finally, we'll get into the local streets. These are going to be your local residential streets. Those are typically 2 travel lanes, sidewalk, and landscaping on both sides. And then adjacent, the main arterial roadways are McHenry, which is the north-south road on the left-hand side of the exhibit, and then Patterson Road, which is the east-west road on the southern part of the exhibit. Just a little more detail on the neighborhood electric vehicle proposal within the specific plan. So I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with these type of vehicles or that terminology, but basically that term, it's meant to indicate, you know, a low speed vehicle. I think they're have to be designed not to be operated more than 35 miles an hour. Obviously, they're electric. And then this plan provides for various either dedicated lanes or shared lanes that would be utilized by the electric vehicles, as well as bicyclists, pedestrians, and whatnot. Here's an exhibit just kind of showing some of the bike and pedestrian routes in addition to the roadways. This next slide kind of gets into the water planning throughout the specific plan. So the exhibit here is an overlay of the utilities for water. The master plan includes a 12-inch main line. Individual neighborhoods would have 8-inch main lines. The plan calls for a 2 million gallon water tank, as well as 3 municipal wells. There'll be a pressure regulated station, and the existing agricultural irrigations to remain. In terms of the sewer plan, the plan highlights that there will be 3 pump stations. These will be located in the northeast, south, and west. These are gravity flow systems, various sizes between 24-inch down to 8-inch mains. The gravity sewer system will convey wastewater from one of the 3 pump stations throughout the site. Ultimately, the discharge will flow northeast to the northeast pump station. The offsite sewer line, approximately 1.4 miles to the wastewater treatment plant, will include a 10-inch force main and a 16-inch force main. In terms of storm drainage, just wanted to highlight on a few things. So the plan itself is set up with various watershed areas. So you'll see the North Basin, that is taking in a 214-acre watershed. It includes 2 connected basins totaling about 6 acres. The West Basin takes in a 226-acre watershed area with a 7.3-acre basin. The East Basin will be watershed area is about 231 acres with a 7.3-acre basin. And finally, the South Basin is a 68-acre watershed with a 1.2-acre basin. That concludes kind of the overview of the specific plan and the application that's been submitted to date. I now want to hand it off and introduce Steve McMurtry with the De Novo Planning Group, who's been helping us through the environmental review process. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Steve McMurtry with De Novo Planning Group. I'm a principal planner. I've been working on this project for about 4 or 5 years. I have about 15, 20 slides that I was going to take you through the environmental process, through the process itself. But then I think because of some of the comments that we received, we wanted to take a little bit deeper dive and provide a little bit of explanation on some of the more technical topics, because I think some of the comments that we received suggested that there was a little bit of misunderstanding in some of the data. And so we wanted to take the time to present some of the data, some of the facts here, and kind of walk through some of our findings. So this first slide is just the initial study process is basically the beginning of the project, and then it carries through draft EIR, final EIR, and ultimately certification hearings. Certification hearings are sort of the final step. And that's, right before the final EIR. And that's really about where we're at right now. I wanted to obviously provide this informational item here first, but I'll, on the following slides, I'll go through some of the process here. So we started with an NOP that was circulated in 2021. This document goes out to state, local agencies, and the general public. There was also a scoping meeting that was held in June 2021. And there's a variety of concerns that are raised from regulatory agencies and also citizens through written comment and also any verbal comments provided at the scoping meeting. And all those are read through and sort of synthesized and then ultimately used for us to do scoping and ultimately provide analysis in the EIR. So very useful comments that are provided. What we received in the areas of concern that sort of we synthesized out of the comments are listed here. So they range from loss of farmland or conversion of farmland, development within a floodplain, impacts to cultural resources, traffic, etc. So, and this is just a sort of a summarized list. Each of the comments are provided in the appendix to the EIR, and then each chapter has sort of pulls out some of the concerns and goes through whoever the technical expert, if it's traffic, be the traffic engineer, goes through and make sure the types of comments are addressed. Some of the facts and the data are presented within that environmental analysis. So this is the sort of a summary of the concerns raised. The draft EIR is then broken up into a variety of chapters, each addressing some of those NOP comment concerns. And essentially, this is a full list of the CEQA topics. So we didn't scope out topics. This is the full breadth of what the California Environmental Quality Act calls for. So it ranges from aesthetics to agricultural resources, noise, traffic. The entire suite is provided within the draft EIR. The EIR also includes a range of alternatives, and this includes a no project, no build alternative, an increased density alternative, a lower density alternative, and then an alternative to address some of the concerns relative to a reserve designation. I'll dive into the reserve designation a little bit more, what that really means and some confusion behind that. But these are the four alternatives, and the alternatives analysis is essentially a comparative analysis where you sort of compare the hypothetical of if you were to implement an increased density alternative for each topic, does that mean a greater impact, a reduced impact relative to the impacts associated with the proposed project? And the EIR, one of the core sort of functions of an EIR is when you identify an impact, you try to develop ways to avoid, minimize, or compensate for the impact to reduce that impact to a lower level. And so we found that there were environmental impacts, and we developed 43 mitigation measures. They address a range of environmental topics listed here: agricultural resources, bio, greenhouse gas emissions, and so forth. So 43 mitigation measures in total. There are also common in really all EIRs is significant unavoidable impacts. There's certain types of impacts that you can develop mitigation measures, but even after you develop a mitigation measure, there's still a significant unavoidable impact. The most common is agricultural. We can develop mitigation measure to compensate at a 1-to-1 ratio with conservation easements, but it doesn't change the fact that the agricultural land is gone. It's developed into an urban use. So we conclude that even though you've mitigated, the conclusion is still significant and unavoidable. And so this is the list of significant unavoidable impacts that we found. What you'll see is it looks like a long list, but it's really two different categories. The left-hand side is the project level impacts, And on the left, the right-hand side is cumulative impacts. The left side is project level impacts, and they're almost the same. The exception is under cumulative impacts. There's two that have an asterisk next to it, and that's the air quality and biological resources. We found that under the cumulative scenario, there would be significant unavoidable impacts for those two topics, but they didn't rise to the level, they didn't exceed thresholds of significance at a project level to have a project level significant unavoidable. Other than that, the two lists are the same, just under two different analysis scenarios. So the public review period for the EIR involved releasing the document in January of 2024, originally for a 45-day public review period. We held a public presentation to the City Council in February of 2024. At that meeting, there were comments, concerns from the citizen groups, and the City Council directed us to go back and develop an EIR in a Spanish version. So we went back, it took a couple of weeks, and published that document with a notice of availability and extended public review period from there so that anybody that wanted to review under the Spanish language document would have a 45-day, a full-length review period. And so the total review period for the EIR was 106 days, which far exceeds the 45-day minimum that the state law requires, but it was 160 days to accommodate the release of the Spanish version. So once the draft EIR public review period concludes, we start to prepare a final EIR. And really what it is breaking down all of the comments, the comment letters into individual comments, and preparing a formal, detailed written response to each one of those. We received 80 comment letters, and we have a formal, detailed written response to each comment letter. What we found was that with that volume of letters, there's some common themes that you start to see, concerns that are repeated. And instead of repeating ourselves over and over with the same sort of response, we developed a master set of responses to address certain topics. On the next slide, I'll provide what master responses they were. But the idea is to try to reduce the length of the document as much as possible so that we don't just repeat ourselves. And then where somebody had a question on, it might be agricultural impacts, we'll refer them to master comment, X to address or to get the information that they need to understand how we were responding. So there's also revisions to the text of the draft EIR. We do that in the form of an errata. So anytime that there's a comment that identifies something that needs to be corrected, we'll track that out in a track change function. And sometimes there's a need to amplify the analysis to explain ourselves a little bit more, there might be misunderstanding. So all of that is done in the form of a track change, and we just really cut out the excerpts of the portion of the draft EIR that's being modified and provide that into an errata or a revision chapter in the final EIR. And then lastly, there is a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. And that's where we take the 43 mitigation measures that we developed, we put it into a checklist and identify the timing that where that mitigation measure would apply. So it might be prior to grading or prior to occupancy. So different, or prior to improvement plans. So we identify when it needs to be implemented and by who it needs to be monitored. So it might be Public Works or planning or a different agency. So we'll identify that in the mitigation monitoring program. The final EIR is a substantial document. So we broke it up into 2 volumes. It's a total of 1,900 pages. So it's very exhaustive, and it's sort of the response. We wanted to be very thorough and detailed, providing an explanation and a response to each of the people that took the time to provide written comments for the draft EIR. So these are the comments that we felt needed a master response. There was 3 that were relative to LAFCO policies regarding ag land, policies regarding the SOI expansion and islands, the type of the EIR, the reserve designation, what that means and what it doesn't mean, Williamson Act, agricultural resources, vacant lands, groundwater sustainability plan, water demand recharge, and biological resources. what I wanted to do here was dive a little deeper into a couple of these topics where I felt like there's a lot of sort of misunderstanding, and I wanted to just lay out some of the facts and provide a little bit more thorough explanation on some of these topics. So the first one is on the reserve designation. It seemed that there was a belief that the reserve designation is an area that would be developed at some point, but we failed to analyze it in the EIR. And that's really not the case. What the reserve designation is, and the city of Riverbank uses the term reserve designation. When you go to other cities, they might call it an urban reserve, but it's very common from city to city, especially throughout the Central Valley. And it's generally the areas that are outside the city limits or possibly outside the planning area, but within the sphere of influence. And it's an area that a city says, we want it to be in this sphere of influence. We don't know what we want to do or if the property owners want to do anything. So we're going to kind of leave it open, but we're just going to call it an urban reserve or a reserve. And so that's really what it is. And it's explained in the general plan. The general plan, actually, the third bullet there, it says the general plan explicitly states that the area does not necessarily imply urban development, but rather could be areas to preserve a natural open space or for agricultural uses. And so what it does, and it's really a planning exercise, land use planners in a long-range planning document, you identify certain areas for future planning, for long-range planning, and it can mean a lot of things. Once you get the property owners to the table, they're going to say what they want, what they don't want with that land, but it is part of a long-range planning process. But again, it has uncertain scope, and it's uncertain. There's no definition to what could or will not be there. And just so to generally summarize this topic, there was a reserve and a no reserve alternative that was analyzed in the EIR. And it's important to know that because there's no definition to it, whether it's in or whether it's out, it's functionally the same. It's a political boundary. Really, that's it. It's not an environmental impact where you put the boundary. So there's no impact that we could identify that was different between the two different alternatives. And it's so important to note too that there is a legal precedent that CEQA does not require analysis of speculative future impacts when project details are undefined. So analysis is only required for reasonably foreseeable projects, not speculative impacts. So CEQA and the court cases that have come out directs us not to try to speculate on what might or might not be in an area like that. It's not ripe for discussion or ripe for analysis. It's part of the long-range planning process. And it requires future analysis if it were ever to come forward with another project. So the next topic is agricultural conversion. The facts are that there's 854 acres of agricultural land that would be converted. When I say agricultural, designated important farmland that would be converted. And that's broken up into three categories here: 661 acres of prime farmland, 165 acres of farmland of statewide importance, and 27 acres of unique farmland. So we identified those impacts. We developed two mitigation measures there. One of them is to permanently protect offsite farmland through conservation easements at a 1-to-1 basis. So for every acre converted, there would be an acre preserved under a conservation easement following the city's sustainable agricultural strategy. And then also very much aligned to the city's strategy, LAFCO has an agricultural preservation policy. And so we just embodied that within a mitigation measure there. And so we found, though, that even with these mitigation measures, the impact still warranted a significant unavoidable impact. Conclusion, there is the two mitigation measures. And again, the legal precedent is that the courts have explicitly recognized 1-to-1 easement ratios as legally sufficient mitigation, and that easement mitigation does not eliminate the original significant loss. So what we laid out is consistent with precedent, and the impact remains significant and unavoidable. So water supply is probably the one topic that was misunderstood more than any other topic. And what we generally found is that the comments were that, you're going to build a lot of houses, there's going to be a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of water demand, and where are you going to get the water from? What I wanted to do was provide sort of the data, and all this is it's really the math of the facts. So this table here has, if you look, there's 5 columns here, starting with on the left-hand side. There's 3 different scenarios under that column, and I'll go through each one of those, what they mean. Then there's existing conditions, which is really pre-development, or what exists out there right now, the baseline condition. And then there's post-development, which is what would be the condition after development was to occur. And then the last 2 columns is a comparative column. One is a difference in acre feet per year of water, and the other one is a % change. And so really what those 2 columns are looking at is the difference between the existing condition and the post-development right there. And so before we go into the numbers, though, I just want to talk about the scenarios. So when we first started looking at the project, the 2007 master plan establishes a certain amount of water demand within the city on a per capita basis, and is 218 gallons per day per person is what the established actual use was in 2007. And we originally did our analysis using that number. Over the 13 years, though, between that 2007 master plan and the city adopted an urban water management plan in 2020, the city was able to look at water meters and come up with actual numbers of water use on a per capita basis. And there was a significant improvement. So the improvement went from 218 gallons per day to 157 gallons per day. Part of that is that the state adopted certain conservation measures and certain requirements for houses. There's a lot of retrofitting that has been done with some of those new requirements. And the target was 165. The city actually exceeded the target and brought it down below the 165 to 157 gallons per day per person. And then the last column is the state water objectives. And so, as I mentioned, between the 2007 and 2020, the state had certain objectives that they wanted cities to strive for. Your city achieved that and exceeded that. Now they've established a new threshold of where they want the cities to achieve. And so they want to bring down that 157 to 99 gallons per capita per day. So that's what the state directive is. And so what this table shows is on the first line, the existing condition, it's the same throughout each scenario. And this is really, I think, where a lot of people were confused in terms of looking at the numbers, because they didn't consider how much water is being used out there right now. The majority of the land is being irrigated through existing wells, agricultural wells. There's a smaller portion that it uses MID surface water, but the majority of the site uses existing wells. So it's pulling from the groundwater aquifer. And
real quick, Steve, if you can clarify, when does the 99 gallons per day go into effect?
I don't know that so it's in effect right now. It's the state objective. It doesn't mean that you have to be meeting it now. It's what you're supposed to be striving to achieve in the future. And typically these objectives are achieved over a 10, 15-year period. New development, it's a lot easier for new development to achieve or exceed standards because they're building from scratch. So the latest and greatest technology, the best water faucets, the best shower heads, toilets, everything that uses water, irrigation system, everything is put in state of the art. It's a little harder to bring older houses up to that 99 gallon per capita per day, because a lot of people, if something works, they're typically not going to retrofit and fix it because it costs money. So they tend to have a higher per capita usage. So it's a combination of both. So again, just going under the existing condition, a lot of almond orchards out there, there's melons, there's a variety of high water users, and it's calculated to be 2,146 acre feet per year. under the existing condition. And so that's sort of our baseline, and it's the baseline for all three different scenarios. When you look at the top scenario, the 2007 master plan under the 218 gallons per day, if you apply that factor to this project, it would require 2,200, almost 2,300 acre feet per year, which would be an increase of water compared to the baseline of 7%. But that was under the sort of 2007 master plan. You guys have achieved the 157 gallons per day. And so if you look at that under the actuals now, and you apply water demand, it's 1,657 acre feet per day, which is a reduction of groundwater pumping of 489 acre feet. So it's a 23% reduction of water pumping from the site to serve urban development relative to the existing agricultural use. It's hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around that development can actually be pretty efficient relative to agricultural. But with the latest technology in terms of housing products and building products, it is achievable. And so if you were able to achieve the state water objectives at some point in the future, we ran that scenario too. And the post-development would be 1,285 acre feet per year, a savings of 861 acre feet per year, or a 40% reduction relative to the baseline. So what this table shows, what the analysis shows, is that the development actually doesn't require more water than actually is currently being pumped from the ground. It actually is leaving more water in the ground than is currently being pumped from the ground. And so just the summary, overall, there's a reduction of 23% if we're using the city's actual numbers right now, and possibly up to 40% if the city's able to achieve the state water objectives. And then when we look at the water supply assessment, which is required for projects over 500 units like this, you project out 20 plus years to see, does the city have available water under a normal condition, and then under a couple of scenarios for drought condition. One is a 1-year drought condition, and one is a multiple year drought condition. And what the analysis shows is that there is sufficient water under the city's water supply to provide this water using available groundwater. So that was water supply. I want to talk a little bit about groundwater too. They're obviously very much related, especially since much of the water supply is groundwater. There was a lot of comments about a law that was passed not too long ago, Groundwater Sustainability Management Act, and then a groundwater sustainability plan that's been prepared and gone through a couple of different revisions. What that document does is it looks at aquifers, different basins, and you're in the Modesto subbasin, and the subbasin is broken into 3 different aquifers. There's an east and a central and a western aquifer, and the eastern aquifer is within the groundwater sustainability plan is identified as a problematic and unstable basin that has been declining. It's declined 40 feet over the past almost 2 decades. And it's attributed primarily to agricultural pumping. But it also identifies that the western regions, which is where the city of Riverbank lies and where this project lies, is considered a stable part of the aquifer. So it's within the subbasin, Modesto subbasin, but not within that portion or that region of the subbasin that is problematic. The sustainable yield is established in the groundwater sustainability plan, 266,000 acre feet, and then urban pumping is capped at 60,000 acre feet. So again, looking back at the last slide, we estimated that 1,657 acre feet is what the demand is for the Riverwalk project, and that represents 2.8% of the city's urban usage and 0.6 of total yield. And then obviously that's based on the city's actuals right now. It would reduce if the city was able to meet the state objectives. And again, 23% reduction in groundwater pumping and with a possibility of achieving the 40% reduction. So overall, we found that reduced groundwater extraction from the site supports the groundwater sustainability plan. Biological is another topic that was a common theme within comments. Wanted to talk a little bit about the analysis, what it was, what it isn't, and then, key mitigation measures. So the analysis involved field surveys, literature review, and record searches. The field surveys were limited to only properties that are participating landowners or gave us access to their property. As a biologist, I'm a biologist, go out and survey properties. And as much as I'd like to go and walk across any properties, I don't have a right to unless I've given permission to. And so we've identified within the draft EIR those areas of the specific plan. And we actually were not given any permission to look at areas outside the specific plan, just within the specific plan. We identified specifically which parcels we actually went out and did transects and surveys on, and then which parcels we did not. Those parcels that we did not survey, you're able to still do a very programmatic level of analysis through literature review, aerial photography, sort of photogrammetry type of analysis, GIS, and all of that. But they haven't been physically surveyed, and they would require some level of physical survey, not just for biology, but other environmental topics like cultural resources and so forth that require some validation prior to any type of grading. So the analysis is project level to some extent, and then programmatic level to some level also. So we found two different habitat types that we'd characterize as upland and aquatic. Within the upland habitat, there's really only three communities. There's an agricultural use, and that can be broken out into a variety of orchards and row crops and other types of agricultural intensive uses. And then there's riparian uses, which is generally those uses that are along the Stanislaus River, and then a bluff area that was sort of a topographical break that's pretty much naturalized, that has an annual grasslands, some oak woodland, that type of habitat. So the aquatic habitat is really, there's some agricultural ditches that contain water at times from both agricultural runoff and any precipitation runoff. There's the Stanislaus River, which is a perennial river. And then there's a riparian area, which has periodic flooding and more of an influence of water. So a different habitat type with trees and lots of ground cover and vines. So we have a variety of mitigation measures. They cover the various species: valley elderberry, longhorn beetle. There's a variety of bumblebees, pond turtles, garter snakes, I should say giant garter snakes, burrowing owls, Swainson's hawk, bats, and aquatic resources. One of the things that is important to recognize is that there are, so the city has their standards, and there's certain things that we can identify as potentially impacted, but ultimately there are federal and state regulations that protect certain species. And so there are regulations and laws in place and permit requirements in place. And so these are uniformly applied standards that every project must comply with. So they're not necessarily mitigation because they exist already and are applicable. And so topics like the Clean Water Act, if you're going to fill a wetland, you have to get a permit. You can't just fill it whether the city says you're authorized or not. You have to get a permit from Department of Fish and Wildlife or U.S. Army Corps. Same goes with the Endangered Species Act on both the federal and the state level. So we do have those. We embody certain requirements, even though they're uniformly applied development standards. We still embody the requirements to go get concurrence or obtain permits and authorizations from the regulatory agencies. We also have compensatory mitigation, which includes habitat preservation and management. Example is conservation easements. And then lastly, we have a requirement for pre-construction surveys. And the purpose for this is a project like this, it's a large project that develops over an extended period of time. It's not in the next couple of years. It's going to be more like 10 to 20 years for it to build out. And what you see at one point in time might change over time. So the pre-construction survey is a way to validate the conditions at that time. So there might not be, for instance, a Swainson's hawk. They're known to be in the region. If there's not a nest today, it doesn't mean there might not be one in 5 years. So the pre-construction survey is that validation where before you go out and you disturb a Swainson's hawk nest that wasn't there and is, you go out and you do a pre-construction survey just to validate before you do any damage. So we have a variety of pre-construction surveys needed to target certain species, sort of focus surveys. And there is legal support for, under the Oakland Heritage Alliance case, regulatory compliance is valid mitigation. The courts have determined that. And under the Save Panoche Valley, pre-construction surveys have been upheld as effective mitigation. I have several slides on flooding. It was another topic that was talked about both in the NOP period and also in the draft EIR period. So this first slide, and this is to talk about the 100-year and the 500-year floodplain. So flood zones, we've listed 3 different categories. A zone X is an area that's protected by a levee from the 100-year floodplain. There's a total of 745 acres, and these are generally going to be your high ground areas shielded by a levee. And there is a levee. If you look at, well, I'll get to that here in a sec. The next category is the 100-year floodplain, which is 194 acres. And these are going to be your low-lying areas that are near a river or agricultural ditch. And then the last category is the 500-year floodplain, total 582 acres. And it's more of an extended floodplain, once in 500-year chance flood. So the 100-year floodplain, there's 2 different areas. If you look at the figures here, the blue is the 100-year floodplain. And if you look over towards the Stanislaus River, which is more on the right side of the site plan, it's all blue. And what that is all land that's on the water side of the levee. So there is a levee that protects and creates sort of upland on the majority of the specific plan area. I'll go to the next slide here in just a minute and show more of a cross-section view of the levee relative to the Stanislaus River and the upland area. But what it does is it provides 10 feet of freeboard for the Berg Hill levee. The Berg Hill levee provides 10 foot of freeboard for the rest of the project. And as you can see on the right-hand slide, all of the roads are laid out. You can see the roads are not within that 100-year floodplain because they're on the land side of the levee. So here's a cross-section view of the levee. You can see there's the existing ground, which is generally farmland right now. And then there's the levee, which provides the 10 feet of freeboard. And then on the river side, the floodplain from the Stanislaus River extends to essentially a certain point within the riparian area that is the 100-year floodplain. And there's not any proposed development within that area. So on this slide, there's several key mitigation measures to note. So first, the city's municipal code requires that the lowest floor of housing is required to be elevated to or above the 100-year flood elevation. So that is a municipal code. It's also consistent with FEMA's federal regulations. So the municipal code and federal law are consistent. Regulations for building in the 100-year are established and uniformly applied development standards. So development can be planned and designed within 100-year, but then there is a process to take it out of the 100-year if there are certain areas of the project that are out of that are within a predefined 100-year floodplain. And so the city's standard under a policy SAFE 1.6 is to impose conditions on a development project or development agreement, a tentative map, a permit, or an entitlement to protect it from the 100-year. And so a project is approvable with conditions of approval that anything designed within 100-year be reconciled. And if you zoom in a little bit on the figure there, you can see on the lower, there's a couple areas that are highlighted, kind of squared off in kind of a magenta color. There are 14 lots down on the southwest corner that fall within the 100-year floodplain. That's internal to the site. And this is not, again, this is, there's a levee that protects from the Stanislaus River, but there's also some 100-year floodplain because of the topography of the site sloping from east to west. And then the bluff, there's water that can pond there under a 100-year storm event. And so this is designed with 14 lots that fall in that southwest corner. And then if you go a little bit to the north along that same road, there's another 6 lots that fall within the 100-year floodplain. And so it's designed this way right now, just in terms of coming up with a layout. There's various options to make sure that no house is actually built in the 100-year floodplain. And so if you look at the bullets within that illustration, it's options for 100-year floodplain. So you can file what's called a letter of map amendment or a letter of map revision. And this is where the civil engineer is going to engineer this with grading and different fill to make sure that the actual pad, the road, everything is meeting the federal and also the municipal code standards, so that no house is built within the 100-year floodplain. And so there are paths forward, and the city implements that through that development agreement, conditions of approval on the map, on the tentative map, permits, etc. The other flood topic or floodplain topic is the 200-year floodplain. And this is something under SB 5. SB 5 was a law that was passed by the state back in 2007. It's been amended. The state basically invented this new floodplain called a 200-year floodplain. And it's just the statistical event that a storm, what levels of storm would come under a 200-year event, or once in 200-year chance, or 0.5 annual chance. So it's a very rare chance, but the state requires cities to plan for that, cities in the Central Valley at least, to plan for that. And so the Department of Water Resources has focused their efforts on the areas that they think are the highest probability of 200-year floodplains. And they've developed what's called a best available map, or a BAM map. And this site is not located within the state's, the Department of Water Resources BAM map. So it's not identified that. What it requires, though, still, the city has requirements and policies to still, through the engineering process, when you're doing storm drainage plans, the civil engineer needs to go through and do analysis. And just like they do for the 100-year floodplain, they need to meet the 200-year floodplain standards through specialized modeling, maybe that the state didn't identify within their BAM maps. And so the project level compliance for this is, first, that the building pads must be at or above 100-year flood elevation. And then for the 200-year floodplain, the state standard and also the city standard, which is consistent with state standard, is that building pads cannot be greater than 3 feet below the 200-year floodplain. And the combination of these two is compliance with SB 5. So the draft EIR and the final EIR, they're both substantial documents. The draft EIR itself, it was so large we had to break it up into 2 volumes. It's 2,600 pages. It's a lot of analysis. There's a lot of technical studies, lots of different experts that were involved in them that put together all of the information. The final EIR also, because there was 80 comments, we were very thorough and thoughtful in all of the responses. So there are also 2 volumes in this document. It's 1,900 pages. It's in the sort of the final stages of editing and finalizing, and it's going to be ready for public review, probably within the next couple of weeks. So that document, again, it's 1,900 pages, so 4,500 pages in total. So ultimately, when the document comes before the Planning Commission, the City Council for certification, the EIR is both of those documents together. So it's a total of 4,500 pages of information that's intended to gather as much technical analysis and input from the citizens, regulatory agencies, and provide that information to assist you in making your decisions. So the document includes significant unavoidable impacts. It includes impacts that were significant but can be reduced with mitigation. And then it also includes impacts that were determined to be insignificant. and also an evaluation of alternatives. So if the project were to be approved, what property owners would need to do is they would have to still receive lots of approvals from the city before they could develop anything. That includes development of improvement plans, grading plans, final maps, building plans, permits, conditional use permits, site plans, design review, and the city staff would be involved in all of that. There would also be through the design and also the implementation, construction phase, operational phase, there would be a need to comply with the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, which is part of the final EIR, in addition to conditions of approval and the development agreement requirements. And again, build out, it's market driven, but it's a project of this size is typically going to be in the 10 to 20 year range before it's developed. So it's a long range plan that takes time to develop, lots of infrastructure to put in. So the next steps, there's Planning Commission and City Council hearings, and that's first really to certify the EIR, that the EIR is adequate and complete and has done a thorough analysis and provides you with the information for you to be able to consider the entitlements, which I won't go through each one of them. I know that there was a list earlier in the presentation that provided all these, but essentially a list of entitlement approvals that would be asked of you. And then once the city approves the document, certifies the EIR, if the entitlements are approved, it still requires another level of approval outside the city, which is LAFCO. Because there's a sphere of influence amendment, there's an annexation of a portion of that sphere of influence. There's also an MSR, Municipal Service Review update. All of these would have to be prepared, applications submitted to the LAFCO, and then ultimately hearings at LAFCO. And that concludes this presentation. I'll hand it back to Josh.
Thank you, Steve. At this time, Mayor, as Steve said, it concludes our presentation. If you have any questions for us on the presentation, be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you both for taking the time to do this. I do want to open it up to council and planning commission comments or questions. As a reminder, today's purely informational and no action will be taken tonight. Any comments or questions?
Josh, just two quick ones for clarification on the specific plan for water. It says existing agricultural irrigation to remain. Could you clarify what that means?
Yeah, if you take a look, I don't know if I should pull up that map, and I can if you need it, but if you look at the property itself, the project area extends beyond the specific plan area. So that reserve area, I think it's intended to, if people are farming out there currently, they could continue to farm. As you know, the irrigation infrastructure, you can't necessarily cut off someone that's downstream on the canal. So I think that's the mention there.
The intent. Okay. And then just, I think I know the answer, but just for clarification, crossing the sewer main to our wastewater treatment, how will that be? How is that proposed?
It's proposed, sorry. It's proposed as a jack and bore underneath the Stanislaus River.
Okay, we had one more question.
First is a curiosity question. Is there one landowner that owns this property now?
There are, I don't know the exact number, but there's upwards of 20 plus landowners. There's lots of parcels. Yeah, there's the, let me see if there's. So this is a list of, or this is a diagram that shows all the parcels, and you can see there's 59 parcels within the overall sphere of influence area. The Berg Hill property is, there's a single, or I think it's a single property owner. Those are the two larger parcels that you see sort of on the north and eastern side. And then there's several of the parcels that are owned by that same group that are a little bit more to the south. So they are the primary applicants, but there's also some participating property owners.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. Down the line, who is going to be the overall manager of this project? The city? Or will we have a contractor who's going to say, this property is going to be condos and this property is going to be for seniors and this is, et cetera, et cetera?
Do you want to answer it?
Yes, Commissioner Dinan, that's a great question. So similar to like how we're seeing Crossroads West develop out, so there would be sort of a master developer. Development of the property itself has to be consistent with the specific plan document. So that document itself lays out all the implementation steps, what the appropriate land use is, minimum lot sizes, the development standards like that. So it's all basically driven out of the specific plan document itself.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council or? Thank you.
So I have a question. You have on here to prioritize the age-restricted development as a vibrant community with diverse housing types and densities allowing residents to age in place. When I read this, it sounds to me like you're proposing regular housing and then assisted living and that type of thing, but my understanding that that's not how it is. Can you explain how that's going to work?
Yeah, age in place, it's a planning concept. There's not a lot of places that have done it. It's an academic concept, but there's several places that have been extremely successful. And the idea is that you create a community that's active adult and you have a variety of products. So when you're 55 years old, you're eligible to go to this area, and you might have, your kids might be out of the house, but you still want to have a single family detached house. And so they're single family detached, but it's a little bit more on the outside of the general community. And as you age a little bit more, you might find that you don't want that big of a house, that big of a yard, but you don't want to have to leave. You like your neighborhood, you like your community, you like all the amenities that it provides. In the way that most communities are developed, you have to move. You have to move to a senior housing, or you have to move somewhere else. You don't get to, the housing just isn't there. So this is designed where you can move closer to the downtown core, where there's more services, more amenities. There's the community core clubhouse, and you have a medium density type of a housing, which might be anything from a 0 lot line to, small lots, smaller houses. You might have 2 bedrooms, you might have condos. So a variety of housing. And then as you age even more, and, typically mobility becomes more of an issue as you age more too, you still want to be close to your amenities, but often you have to move far away and to a memory care facility or assisted living, and there's just nothing there outside of your facility. But the idea is to place that right in the downtown so that the people, once you age out of the medium density and you need, whether it be senior housing, assisted living, memory care, something like that, you put that in the core of the downtown. So then you're right there with all the amenities that you've lived, for however many years of your life in that same community, never having to leave.
Commissioner.
Yeah, having to do with the water plan. I saw that it looks like there's 3 wells currently planned to serve this area. I know, having had the privilege of being able to tour the site more than once, that there are existing agricultural wells down there. Are those going to be repurposed, or are those going to be capped per health standards and new wells constructed out there?
So my understanding is that there's going to be new wells that are created that are going to be municipal wells, and the municipal water is treated at a different level. Everything's a little bit different than agricultural wells. And so because this is going to take 10, 20 years, there's going to be some wells, a well probably put in at first to do a first phase of a project. anything that continues being used as agricultural is going to continue to have whatever infrastructure in place, water consumption from those existing wells in place. And then also if there's any shared wells between different properties, they have to remain in place so that you can still farm the land, so that there's no impact on existing agricultural uses. So it's sort of a combination. The agricultural wells will phase out at time when that property no longer needs that well.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding the Burke Hill levee, has that been evaluated? Is the integrity of it been reviewed? How is that going to progress as the project continues? And then for the life of the existence of the community, how is that levee going to be maintained?
I know it's owned by the Went Reclamation District. So there is a reclamation district that's in place, that's in charge of it. I don't know them, but they own the levee. It's in place. And it's not going to be removed. I mean, what level of improvement is needed? I know that most reclamation districts have certain authorizations to do, cleanup, vegetation abatement, things like that. If there's ground squirrels, they typically are authorized to do some abatement of that to make sure they do just sort of a clean off with the grading, so that kind of thing. But we didn't analyze, what Went Ranch is going to do with the levee, but we know that it's not going to be removed.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to in the second portion here. Thank you for your patience. Any other questions from the commission?
First of all, I worked on that original master plan, and it's definitely set up as an agricultural reserve. I know that it was definitely an agricultural reserve. And I have questions. The decreased water usage, I'm not quite sure. Does that just mean that there are going to be additional state restrictions, or are we going to be using gray tanks in these houses? And then also another one, is our current water treatment facility going to be able to handle all the increase? That's it.
The question on the water use, are you meaning the state water objectives that bring it down to 99? It's the city. It's a directive from the state for all cities throughout the state, right? It's not just Riverbank or anybody else. So you guys in the past have proven that you're able to achieve the state's directives, and that's through a combination of, building technologies and irrigation strategies, landscaping strategies. So it's a variety of no, the plan was not to do kind of recycled, repurposed water or anything like that. This plan doesn't include that. The city doesn't have the infrastructure to do that. So
just a reminder to please use the microphone for the record.
The water treatment plant, is that going to be able to handle the increase?
So the permitted capacity allows for the demand that would be generated from this project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from our council or commission? So as a reminder, we are going to move into public comment. Please go to the back here and write your name down and give the information. That way we can keep this as orderly as possible and give ample time for all comments to be said. Let me see here. So we're going to move into public comment. So they are going to be on tonight's item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council Planning Commission. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, and time cannot be yielded to another person. Under state law, matters presented during public comment cannot be discussed or acted upon. Our city clerk will begin calling up to the microphone right here. Individuals who have filed a comment card. If you would like to make a public comment and have not completed one, again, please go to the back. Please remember, this is going to a process to allow for everybody to be able to say what they need during public comment. So we will hear all public comment, and as time permits, we will be answering some questions here at the end. Let me see, make sure I said everything I need to. As always, if your question or your comment is not addressed, this information tonight is meant to continue the conversation. So please feel free to reach out to any of your council members or commissioners, to staff. We are ready to continue this conversation beyond tonight. And I think that is it. So we will have a hard stop at 3 minutes. I don't intend to be rude to anybody, but I do want to make sure, again, we're hearing everybody out. And that is it. So City Clerk.
I will be calling up names as you filled out the comment cards. Excuse me if I mess up on anybody's name ahead of time or last name. If you can please come up to this mic right here on my right side. And then I will begin with Mr. Barney Agers.
This is the mic. Okay. Barney Agers, I live on the McHenry Avenue on the western edge of this proposed project. I'm a Farm Bureau member, and as such, I receive publications quite often. And the latest one, the Ag Alert, announces the front page headline is contrary to information you recently received at a city council meeting about there is plenty of land being farmed, insinuating that the 1,000 acres that would be taken out by this project isn't needed. Specifically, the article said, citing the most recent U.S. Census of U.S. Census of Agriculture, 20% of farms have been lost in the last 10 years. This loss is evidence that ag in the Golden State is at a tipping point. We don't have too much ag land. It is disappearing. This states that ag is at a critical juncture, and farm leaders are concerned about this loss of farmland. So consequently, if Riverbank annexes all the way to McHenry, we'll lose the buffer between communities. This is what is called sprawl. You can't identify Riverbank as being separate from Modesto. It'll encroach all the way to Del Rio. The impacts on the wildlife corridor that is right along the Stanislaus River will be severely impacted. I spoke to a local fish and game warden. He knows the area. He says there's over 100 species that will be affected in that area, not to mention the traffic impacts. That's all I have to say. I ask that you don't approve this project. There are many other people that agree with me.
I really appreciate the passion on either side, but so we can move through the comments, let's please withhold that.
Mr. Dan Whetstone?
Good evening. My name's Dan Whetstone. I live next door to Barney. My back windows look over this proposed project area. I wasn't going to mention this water situation, but surely some of the irrigation water seeps back down into the ground. How much of the water is going that the area is going to use after it's developed, it's going to go into the ground. It's going to get pumped over to the sewer across the river or the water treatment plant. What I really want to talk about is, again, we look over that beautiful area. We were just awakened a couple weeks ago by a turkey. There's fox and the Swainson hawk, and the coyotes are always yelling down there. Of course, there's raccoons and possums and things like that. But I've talked to a few of you, come before you before. Why there? It's a great idea, great project. Not there though. It's just, again, if you've all seen it, it's pristine. It's, why jump way out there from Riverbank? Why go the 2 miles or so? There's so much area between there and Riverbank, and especially on the other side of Riverbank. For your kids, your grandkids, please don't approve this project. It's just, the landowner, I'm sure he needs the money, but it's just such a nice site. It's such a, as far as habitat and again, for posterity. So please don't approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk?
Vaccaro? The name Vaccaro.
I'm Gary Vaccaro, lived in Riverbank for the last 39 years. And I sent a letter to the city council weeks ago now. I didn't have any response, so I'm going to read it again so the other people can listen to what I said. The first question I have of our speakers is, why is this project good for the people who live in Riverbank, Escalon, and Oakdale? Nobody ever said why it will benefit us. First, it'll take away the 1,522 acres of prime farmland, and that's forever. You can mitigate it and say, well, we're going to reserve this, but that reserved land may be out in the foothills where there's no water anyway. The saying that you can't get there from here is becoming more true in Riverbank. Sometimes during the rush hours, it takes you lots of extra minutes to get anywhere. And the ones who didn't start earlier in order to get to where they're going, they're passing you and driving recklessly without using their turn signals. Back in the 70s and 80s, we used to ride our bicycles into Riverbank and from Oakdale and Modesto, and we didn't have to pack our death wish with us like you would now if you're riding bicycles. The average number of automobiles per household, according to Siri, is 2.28 automobiles. Therefore, in Riverwalk, we could expect about 5,000 vehicles. They wouldn't all be on the road at the same time, but any extra traffic that we have that we allow won't be any help to us at all. The land coveted by the developers for Riverwalk is mostly river bottom land. There might be floodplain in part of it and not in the other, but maybe we ought to ask some of the Texans about building close to rivers, because floods can happen when you don't expect them, even though it may be 200 years. One of the speakers talked about the number of animals that would be displaced, and I've personally seen all of these. They're black-tailed deer, coyotes, possums, skunks, raccoons, foxes, rabbits, turkeys. We have wild turkeys here.
Thank you very much.
Have I used up my time? In the long run, the folks in Riverbank.
Thank you very much. We're going to call the next person up to the microphone. I appreciate you coming for public comment. Can you call the next name?
Miss Ferrari? Miss Ferrari.
This is stable.
The Riverwalk project is in direct violation of Stanislaus County policies and its mandate to discourage sprawl, protect farmland, and encourage orderly government. It is not in compliance with the land use and agricultural elements of Stanislaus County's general plan. In 2016, the county supported Riverbank's 1,479 acre expansion intended to accommodate Riverbank's growth for 20 years and the largest border expansion in the county's history. Stanislaus County's formal response to the proposed Riverwalk states it is premature and does not maintain a logical land use pattern. Stanislaus LAFCO has the same comments. It is premature and does not. In 2006, Group A proposed a 3,000 home development on much of the same property. With 3,000 residences would come thousands of people and cars, and with a designation as a floodplain. Group A offered to assist in getting a bridge built. There was the question of the $50 million price tag and the question of where the bridge would be built. In 2007, Group A had agreements to buy property and call the project the Bridges. With pressure from local and regional citizens, Group A abandoned the project. The city of Riverbank is now proposing putting a 2,500 unit residential project on the similar area along the Stanislaus River, calling it Riverwalk. Much of the development is on a floodplain. No bridge was built to move people over the river in the event of flooding. The proposed land has flooded twice in recent memory. In 1955, it flooded to what would be rooftop level. In the 1970s, the seepage enabled neighborhood kids to paddle canoes on a floodplain. Who is responsible when the river overflows? Climate change has put thousands of people in harm's way along America's rivers. This project is opposed by Friends of the Swainson's Hawk, Farmland Working Group, League of Women Voters, Stanislaus Audubon Society, Sierra Club, Voters for Farmland, and the Tuolumne River Trust.
Thank you. Mr. Rich Homer? Rich Homer?
Good evening, Rich Homer, 2116 Parkers Drive, Riverbank. One thing I couldn't understand is why you folks don't use the MID canals for any irrigation in there. That just doesn't make sense to me because you've got canals going through there. The one thing I'm really concerned about is they're going to drill 3 new deep wells and install a 2 million gallon water tank to support the Riverwalk development. However, the Park Heights Water District is adjacent to this, and this hasn't been mentioned. We have 2 wells, and unfortunately, they're not the deepest to serve 97 homes. The production of these wells will be compromised by the drilling. There'll be a big suction sound that goes over to the proposed Riverwalk project. And, this must be addressed by you folks. Also, I found that there's no mention, we're a county island, and in your report about this. So I was concerned about that. The loss of prime farmland agriculture is not warranted for non-existent housing need at the expense of irreparable damage to the Stanislaus River wildlife corridor. The University of Davis did a study in 2008 that went to 2014, which was adopted by Fish and Wildlife. And what they said was there are so many unique items, unique animals, birds, wildlife, plants in that area that I don't care what he says of that 2 things that will done in 2010, 2011. That was adopted in 2014 by Fish and Wildlife. So maybe you should look at Fish and Wildlife and see what they say about it. As well as endangering the water supply of all existing adjacent neighborhoods, placing undue stress on Riverbank's wastewater treatment plant, not to mention they're planning on going Coffee Road and major traffic concerns, pollution, and other negative impacts. I strongly urge the mayor and city council to not to vote for this project and to further work with the state of California and Stanislaus County to protect the local regional wildlife habitat as well as our irreplaceable farmland. The thing about the 55-year-old, the reason they're doing that is because that's a secondary school district. That's a Stanislaus Consolidated District. One of the reasons Groupie didn't go through was because there are two districts there, and Riverbank already had Sylvan, Riverbank, and Modesto School District. They didn't want a fourth district. So now they've come up with a genuine idea of a 55-year-old community.
Thank you, Rich.
Mr. Turner, Jonathan Turner.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Thank you, and members of at the table. A lot of information presented tonight. I tend to look at the three stock issues of any proposal, and three stock issues I see here: need, desire, and practicality. Do we need Riverwalk? It sounds like if it was put in somewhere and it worked, it was viable, very good plans behind it. I'm sure sociologists would recommend it. But I received a card in the mail. Well, by the way, I live at 2300 Crossing Way. I'm not on the river, I'm not on the bluff, but I am very close to Crossroads Elementary School. Well, I'm a retired teacher, I volunteer there. And my question, my thoughts are, if we put in 2,500 homes, some of them are going to have children, I'm betting, and where do those children go? And another question I have on the practicality stock issue, how much will this increase our need for fire protection, police protection in this area, in the River Walk? And it's also mentioned water and sewer rates probably will be impacted. So I'm thinking about that. Now, desire, stock issue, somebody desires it. Yes, I respect people's right to make money. They own property, they want to sell it. I understand, but we need to look at the total impact on the Riverbank community. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Homer? Chris Homer?
Hi, Chris Homer, and I live in River Heights. I've been there almost 30 years. So my concern is that you're not listening to what the residents of Riverbank want. The residents of Riverbank elected you to represent them and make the best decisions for the growth and development of the city. Over 1,700 registered voters signed a petition accepted by the city council saying that any proposed annexation of the Riverwalk land or any property outside of the city limits would go to a vote of all registered Riverbank residents. The vote will not take place until 2026. It appears that you're rushing to approve the Riverwalk project and appease developers before the citizens are allowed to make their opinions known via the ballot box. The message seems to be you are choosing to work with developers over the residents you represent. This development will impact them for many years to come. Please listen to the residents you represent and allow them to voice their opinion and then act accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Herrick? John Herrick.
My name's John Herrick. I live in Modesto. Thank you, council members and commissioners. FEMA approval of letter of map revision, LOMAR, is essential to the Riverwalk project. Map revisions will be based on a levee that's estimated to be 70 to 80 years old. The draft EIR provides no insight into the levee's design or construction standards. No specific analysis of the levee's integrity is provided in the DEIR other than following generic passage copied from the state plan of flood control, which stated, under flood control conditions, upstream reservoir release operations are designed not to exceed a flow of 8,000 cubic feet per second channel capacity in the lower Stanislaus River from Goodwin Dam downstream the San Joaquin River. The local interest project levies have been identified by the Corps of Engineers as adequate to contain this design capacity. So who will be responsible for maintaining the levees and its related costs? Will it be the city of Riverbank, since the project will be located within the city's limits? Will it be the existing Went Ranch Reclamation District? Will it be individual property owners in the build-out residential and commercial development, or some other entity? Who will be liable for damage caused by a future levee failure? The jeopardy to life and property is certainly different for the existing agricultural operation than for a 2,400 to 2,600 unit development. Large portion occupied by 55-plus-year-olds trying to evacuate their homes and their neighborhood electric vehicles. The applicable flood insurance rate map panel dated September 2008 includes Riverbank and the specific plan area, designating the levee bordering Riverbank as an accredited system. With this caveat, warning, provisionally accredited levee accreditation expires on August 28, 2009. The levee symbol continues downstream, bordering the specific plan area. Presumably, this stretch of the levee is accredited, but the draft EIR provides no insight to that. There are several community engagement opportunities in the LOMAR process, according to FEMA's guidance for flood risk analysis and mapping. I recommend that the city of Riverbank, as the lead agency, assume the community engagement responsibilities. The current federal administration plans to phase out FEMA by the end of 2025. The National Flood Insurance Program's authorization expires September 30, 2025. According to Congress.gov, the 119th Congress will need to consider a number of issues as they consider legislation for long-term reauthorization and reform of the National Flood Insurance Program. I hope the city of Riverbank will make a considered effort to examine.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Gary Pearson?
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council members and Planning Commission. My name is Gary Pearson. I'm a resident in District 3 in Riverbank, and I'm speaking tonight to express my strong opposition to the proposed Riverwalk project. In my household, there are 3 registered voters that have signed the Urban Limit Initiative. The 3 of us want the opportunity to vote on the Urban Limit Initiative before the council takes action. Our concerns are as follows. First, flooding. This area has a clear history of flooding. Even after New Maloney's Dam was built, the Stanislaus River has reached flows over 10,000 cubic feet per second, and the area in question flooded on multiple occasions. These events are well documented. Even we've seen high flood issues, and they affect us in real life. 2017, the Oroville Dam spillway forced 180,000 people to evacuate. In 2023, a levee breach in Planada, just east of Merced, displaced an entire working class community of 4,500. Maintenance and repair had been deferred for years, even though officials knew it was risky. We can't afford to repeat these mistakes in Riverbank. Second, the wastewater pipe that crosses the Stanislaus has already failed twice due to flooding. Currently, the city is developing a new tertiary treatment facility with a projected cost of $120 million. It appears the Riverwalk project will connect to the wastewater treatment, but is the developer paying for this connection or the city of Riverbank? Will this affect our resident sewer and waste rates, which currently are being raised over the next several years? Third, let's talk about dams. The Stanislaus River originates high in the Sierras, an area I know very well from years of hiking. Water flows down through aging infrastructure. Relief Reservoir, Beardsley, Dardanelle, Tulloch, and Maloney's. Currently, Relief Reservoir, built in 1920, is already leaking due to age and earthquake damage. PG&E does have a plan and hopes to complete those repairs in 2030. However, we're placing development downstream of these dams that are nearly a century old and show deterioration. We are residents and we should be concerned. Lastly, Sigma. The Riverbank project, yes, I concur, is in the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, but it is putting 3 new wells. Is that the real analysis? It doesn't really show the effect of the city of Modesto's nearby wells, and this is going to cause unsustainability in water use. If you review the well reports, both from the city of Riverbank and the eastern part of Stanislaus County, it shows a drop in the wells considerably over time. And this can be proven by the Department of Water Resources. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Cliff Nagel? Mr. Cliff Nagel?
Good evening. I'm Cliff Nagel. I live at 6613 Candlewood Circle, Riverbank. When I was 85, I could have trotted over here, but 5 years later, I'm a little bit doddery, but my brain isn't. In various years, I have heard many proposals like this. And once they are approved, oftentimes, if not almost every time, the developers come back to the city council and say, oh, the interest rates have raised, building costs have raised. We had initially planned to put 6 houses in an acre, and now we've got to put 12. We've got to do away with this walkway or that walkway or this park or that park. And the city council acquiesces. And there we are with nothing. I do have concern about the people who have property there and maybe are as old as I and are ready to chuck it in and just relax for a while and may or may not be able to do so. Unfortunately, that's the case. I'm concerned about traffic. It was my understanding that Coffee Road was going to be a major entrance to that development. That may be wrong now. I do not know. If it is, I would assume that there's going to be a traffic light there. You put a traffic light there, you're going to have a parking lot from McHenry Avenue all the way down Patterson Road to where it turns. Because there's already a traffic light at Oakdale and up by the movie theater and down at the further corner. And if you've ever traveled in Riverbank, you can see how Oakdale Road, Coffee Road, Patterson Road, McHenry, you might as well put parking meters there because they've become parking lots at times. Another speaker mentioned something which is I have said many times before this group. Tell me how this is going to make my life better, how it's going to make their life better. What's it going to do for the people who are already citizens of Riverbank and who have voted for you and could vote against you? The gentleman who made the presentation reminded me a little bit of, if you remember Muhammad Ali, the great boxer. He dazzled people with footwork. This man tried to dazzle us with the statistics, and he'd bury us with statistics.
Mark Heisinger? Heisinger?
Good evening, everyone, and I live in Parkwoods West, a new resident there. Want to thank and commend the City Council and the Planning Commission for having these meetings to get input and all of those things. My concern and hope is that sometimes a larger plan development may take into account all the variety of concerns. A multitude of important things have been shared tonight about traffic, water, irrigation, just a multitude of different things. And I think a larger scale development could possibly plan for the future, not only the people here now, but people who want to continue to live in Riverbank in the future. And I just think the process needs to be respected, having ongoing meetings, getting input, trying to come up with the best plan possible instead of just a piecemeal development plan where little projects are done or there's no overall thinking or understanding of where the project may be in the future.
Thank you.
Denny Jackman. Denny Jackman.
Good evening, council members and commissioners. Denny Jackman. I'm born and raised in Modesto. I am the author of Stamp Out Sprawl initiative that was passed by 70% of the voting public in Stanislaus County, which directs housing into the cities so we can properly pay for those services. And I am also the author of the Urban Limit Initiative that's on your ballot in November of next year. And it's because Riverbank here is right in the heart of, northern heart of, as you know, of Stanislaus County. To the west of you, the west of the boundary on your western city limits is the best farmland in the world, not just some of the best farmland in the world. This area to the west of Riverbank is the best water recharge area in Stanislaus County. Not some of the best, the best. The soils that you could see on this important farmland map from the state of California shows all kinds of soils that are lousy soils to the east of Riverbank, to the east of Modesto, south of Oakdale. So we have places we can go and still be able to grow our food in west of Riverbank. I implore you to let the citizens have their say in November of 26, which you already have by approving it for the November ballot. Appreciate that. And you want to, I think, avoid cost. It is unclear what happens when there's a public initiative on the ballot and it passes, and what you've approved conflicts with that initiative. We're all going to find out one day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Irene Lopez. Irene Lopez. Irene Lopez. I'll call it back again after. Joyce Jewett.
Good evening. I live at 3430 High Street. I live right on the river, and I don't want you to approve this. This is our city. We have so much that we need to take care of before we add on all these monies. There's so much near my house, the homeless, the water, just like my husband brought me in here in 1983. My city bill was $85 till 2011. And then it went to 126, 136, 164, 184, 189, 200. Now it's 371. They could have raised it during all those years, but they didn't do it. And what I'm saying is we can't approve this. We need to take care of our infrastructure, what we have already. We have, like by my house, we have parkways to walk. What is it for the city? It's not for us. It's for these people who live outside of our city to come in here and bring it. My children, I sold my home to my children so they could have homes because we can't afford it here. You're not looking at the people who live here, who pay our bills, who elect you, who don't elect you, who are here. Our schools are good. Everything is good about Riverbank. That's why my husband brought me here. His grandparents started here in 1921. And he was the first doctor. He came on the railroad and brought his wife and daughters here to make this life here in Riverbank. And we cannot allow our city to go and lose. You know, we have to protect. Look at what happened in Texas this week. My sister lives there and she lives a little ways away and they've lost 8 people and 1's gone. So we have to really, I live across the street from it. And I'm just a single widow. And so I am doing the best I can. And I think we need to protect our children. I have grandkids that will go here. My son went to RLA. We have the best schools. We have all my children went to school here. My and my grandkids are going to go here. So we need to keep our schools. We need to protect what we already have. We don't need this urban sprawl that's going to take away our farmland. We need to keep our farmland. We need to protect it. Who's going to feed us? I feed my children, and my grandchildren. I protect them. I do everything I can as a widow. But having said that, who is going to do that for us when we make this sprawl? Even they wanted to do they wanted to do open up Escalon and make a golf course back in the day. And that didn't pass because it wasn't really a good thing. God bless
Miss
you
Jamie
guys.
Agers? Miss Jamie Agers?
Jamie Agers, I live on McHenry Avenue within the area of the project that would be part of the sphere of influence increase. I just have a couple of miscellaneous points I'd like to raise. Hopefully they'll be answered in the final EIR or maybe through some other means. First was a question, will the final draft EIR also be translated into Spanish like the draft version eventually was? Secondly, page 4-0-22 of the draft EIR refers to the maximum density of Riverwalk to be 5,607 residential units, whereas the remainder of the EIR refers to a range of roughly 2,400 to 2,700 units. What's the real number? Approximately 2,500 homes, or is it more than double this number? And if the project is built at the maximum density, what analysis was done in the EIR of this higher number? Lastly, just a point of clarification. One of the commissioners asked about whether or not an expansion of the existing wastewater treatment plant would be required, and the consultant indicated that it did not. However, the EIR discussed the need for an expansion in order to accommodate Riverwalk, albeit a limited expansion, but there was a discussion about an expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robert K. Donovan? Robert K. Donovan? You guys can go one at a time. Yeah.
I'll let her go first.
No, you go first.
Okay. Usually I like my wife to go first. Exactly. Well, again, I'm Robert Donovan. I live on Zerillo Drive. I've been in Riverbank for about 20 years. Some of you may know me. I'm an ER physician. You don't want to know ER physicians. I do have a few comments. So one of them has to do with your proposal or your presentation concerning the watershed. You mentioned that the development would actually reduce the amount of water coming from the watershed. But you didn't really account for runoff going to the groundwater. And I see that when I looked at your proposal, pretty much everything goes elsewhere. You seem to drain it into the MID canals, you drain it elsewhere. So I think the total impact to the watershed would be greater than what you proposed. I also reflect what the person said earlier. I didn't get a real definitive answer on the effect on the sewer program. I got the impression you alluded to the proposed reductions in the per capita use of water rather than what actually has been used. And I do think that the impact on the sewer treatment would be greater than planned. People did mention as far as the biological impact, and we live on the river. And as they mentioned, I see coyotes, turkeys, so many things. And there's so many locations where a project like this would be much better suited than where it is. And the final thing has to do with, I've listened to what happened in Modesto for a long time, the Village One projects. I remember listening to all the wonderful things it was going to do, and then listen over time and time and time. One thing got pulled away, another thing, another thing. So if nothing else, I'd certainly want to see, how does this developer's batting average? How often are they successful in having a proposal and it actually coming to fruition? Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, do I get the rest of his time plus mine? No.
No, you just get yours.
So just Kate Donovan, nurse, retired, correcting my husband. We've been in Riverbank for 26 years. So I have two concerns. One is on the biological impact. We do live on the river. We're fortunate enough. And we watch the riparian wildlife. And this gentleman who gave the environmental impact report, nothing personal, sir. I'm sure you're a lovely person. But it was vague what the actual biological impact will be. I heard California regulations cited, or, but I personally don't currently have a lot of faith in California leadership. They allowed LA to burn to the ground a few months ago. So I'm not really relying on that. And the environmental impact report's going to be 4,500 pages. Who's going to read that? Yeah, I mean, you folks don't have you're not Congress, you don't have a staff. So who's going to read that? And, and your report was very thorough and very impressive, but, I was looking at the audience, a lot of our eyes glazed over. So, what is the definitive impact? So I am concerned. I feel like those of us, not only who live on the river, but those of us who live in Riverbank, we have a stewardship to the river. It's entrusted to our care. And I watch people recreate down on the river and they leave trash. We've even gone down there and picked up trash. So when you create this river walk, there's a lot of pretty pictures, but you're not only, increasing the human access of those who will reside in the area, but people are going to come in from the outside. And that's a lot more human access to the river. So I have that concern. My other concern is for the character of Riverbank. When we first moved here in 1999, my husband would go to the little True Value hardware store. I think it was up the road here on Santa Fe. And the gentleman who owned it would say, yeah, that thingamajig, you go down that aisle, you turn right, it's on the bottom shelf behind the whatchamacallit. And then Crossroads opened and Home Depot and Save Mart. And it was great, but True Value closed, okay? When Save Mart opened, O'Brien's Market had to adjust their inventory. I watched it happen. And then Costco opened. Now, I have mixed feelings about that. It's convenient, but O'Brien's closed. That was it for O'Brien. So, Riverbank has a character, and I'm concerned about us preserving the character of Riverbank. I think we're unique. And I think I personally don't want us to lose that. And I'm sure there's a lot of money to be made for the city, for the developer. So there's my two concerns.
Jane, you? Jane, you?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jane Yu. Thank you for the presentation. Unfortunately, it does not address the operating costs that have been distributed to all the current residents based on past projects. These are very problematic. Let's look at the aggressive increase in property tax. I think it exceeds the restrictions set by Proposition 13, developed in 1978. If you visit some of the new homes, it's 1.5% upward, which is above the California median rate. And I can see that some of the new homes will experience the same dramatic increase. Second one, we have witnessed the aggressive increase in utility bills. After I moved in, 3 times what I originally paid. What are this money used for? Please explain. And number 3, unfortunately, there's a reduction of surface level. We try to call the Public Works Department, hey, come and help us to set the meter for the lawn. They say we no longer provide this type of services. Okay, if you have all the increase of fund flowing in with the anchor Costco, why are you reducing the services? My question is, please explain why the anchor Costco, the fund, how do you distribute the fund, okay? And why we have a reduction of services. And look at the quality of the water. And we constantly see white powders on the pans, and we complain, but nobody addressed the issue. If you use the money coming from Costco, which is $1 million of income tax, we should not have to pay such high utility bill, high property tax. Please listen to your Riverbank client, Riverbank residents. It's very important you leave a good legacy with your work. We do not support your project. Thank you.
Thank you. Vivian Lopez?
Good evening. I'm Vivian Lopez, Riverbank resident, and I live in District 2. My concern with the Riverwalk project is that I don't want to see another Del Rio Club neighborhood in my community. We need to have an inclusive city. There is a geographic isolation. It is a physical separation. This leads to geographic isolation and limited interaction with longtime city residents. There will be poor community engagement, limited to tie in with core city neighborhoods. The Riverwalk has a feel of an exclusive private community. In regards to social community engagement, although the Riverwalk may have a strong cohesion, but a limited connection with the city of Riverbank. This strong cohesion that the Riverwalk will probably have is due to a shared lifestyle and values. Those living at the Riverwalk may tend to prioritize their own concerns and interest. We may lose the town governance of balancing diverse interest, which in turn fosters civic participation and shared responsibility. I don't want to see another Del Rio neighborhood in our community.
give Riverbank residents the opportunity to vote on the Riverwalk project before the city council votes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eddie Cuellar? Eddie Cuellar? Okay, I will move on. Mr. Richard O'Brien?
Good evening. I'd like to thank the council and the commission for this forum. It is useful. I am one to take a look at the total project. The project is serving 55 and olders. And these is a community, a group of individuals that do need a lot of government help and assistance. This is taking it out of the government and putting it into a private sector. Okay, it is allowing them to be interactive within their own age group, and their impact will be minimal on the city, but at the same time, they will be adding to your coffers. One of the things that are very beneficial, the opportunities that do exist, is that in the future, you can put a capacity fee on their wastewater and their water consumption. That will lower some of your impacts in the future, no matter what your plans are for the wastewater treatment plant or water itself. This is something that has never been done to any of the other residents, but it will be applied specifically to this project and any future project if that's what your desire is. The impact on traffic will be much more minimal than you may believe. They are a self-contained community. They're a Del Webb, not a Del Rio. This is communities that are very successful in serving the elderly as they grow older until they get to the last or final place of occupancy. I want to address the ag land. Now, I truly respect Denny Jackman and the Farmland Trust, but they have different ideas of what is important and what is not. A year ago, I was on LAFCO, and we had the same individuals like you have come up and said, I oppose Riverwalk, preserve ag land. Gets up, walks out. Later on that day, within 5 minutes, we started the Zachariah project, over 1,600 acres of totally prime ag land. Not a single opponent to that project. Nothing from the Farmland Trust, nothing from Denny Jackman, nothing from Jeannie Ferrari. The project was voted upon without a single letter. And you have to balance why Riverbank versus Zachariah. Well, it's people don't want it in their backyard. I think you take a look at it. Does it need to be done? Do we need a Del Rio type of a community in Stanislaus? Not just Riverbank, but in Stanislaus. I think you take a look saying it does, and we can take advantage and make the best of the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Miyakwa?
Sorry, that's okay.
Mispronunciation.
No problem. My name is Jennifer Miyakoa. I'm a Riverbank resident for the last 21 years. I'm a school board trustee for Sylvan Union School District, which serves the students in Crossroads and Crossroads West neighborhoods. And full disclosure, I am a beneficiary of Crossroads growth as I live in the original Crossroads development. And I'm grateful to be a Riverbank resident. This is a special community. So like I said, I hadn't planned on originally saying anything today. I came here to listen, but I do have a couple points and much was clarified. So I appreciate that. I want to thank those who presented today, especially for addressing and clarifying some of the specific things that were concerning to residents. I've learned a lot. I feel like I need to monitor my shower consumption now. I'm not sure how many gallons I'm using when I shower, but there was, I think the biggest issue here that we're all kind of hitting around is we're having growing pains as Riverbank community. I think the writing was on the wall the second they put Target in, and then especially when Costco became an anchor business, and then TJ Maxx and Home Goods, and then Hobby Lobby, which just announced today, I saw. And we have the North County corridor that will be going through relatively close by. So all of these things we knew were going to impact our community. And I think it's just a bigger discussion we need to have on what we do about that and how we accommodate growth in a responsible way. My question that I think was answered had to do with the support, how local schools will be impacted. Have Riverbank and Stan Union District been consulted on how this will impact their designated space? Will they need a designated space for another school? From what I understand, it sounds like it's a predominantly age-restricted community, which I was not aware of previously, that there'll only be 450 lots out of 2,400 that would potentially be for smaller families. So the impact may be smaller than otherwise, but that should always be a prime consideration, that schools aren't the last ones considered. Because growth forces new schools and they should be a part of the conversation from the get-go. Traffic considerations, I'm not sure that was fully answered. I went back to the slide, I think it was slide 17, that talked about the specific lanes that were going to be inside, but I didn't see anything specific, and that's because I haven't read it thoroughly. On those Patterson, McKinney, Coffrey roads that will be impacted, just as we've seen Clarabelle impacted with Costco. And so are those roads going to be widened before or after development? Finally, just that impact, we're a small town, but in our bones, we're a small town city, right? And we care about each other. And so I really think we have to be careful that that we have conversations with other communities that had rapid growth, like Ripon, that's maybe more our size, and how they accommodated for growth and the support structures, like they were talking about fire and police that support us. So just having these conversations with other communities that have this rapid growth and how we can do it in a responsible way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Milt Treeweiler?
Good evening, council, staff, mayor, planning commissioners, Milt Treeweiler. I'm a lifetime Stanislaus County resident. My statement is I have no interest in any kind of land anywhere. The only property I own is my residence, which is fully paid for. I have zero debt and pay off all my bills and credit cards when I receive them. I'm here tonight to speak for our children and descendants, since most of them cannot do this for themselves since they're too young or they haven't been born yet. This is a responsibility we adults have today. The prime farmland in the proposed Riverwalk project is a natural resource that cannot be replaced or mitigated because of its unique nature, its quality soils, its water availability, and its good climate. There is no other farmland like it in the world. The proposed Riverwalk sphere of influence is 2.4 square miles in size. That's larger than the entire city of Houston and as large as the city of Waterford. There is a major shortage of prime farmland and water in the world today. City of Riverbank, council, planning commissioners, you represent the residents. And there are many things you need to be concerned about today. We have to be very careful about what we listen to and what we believe. There are people in Stanislaus County and Riverbank who are scheming to destroy the future for our children and descendants. This farmland within the specific plan area is prime farmland plus riparian habitat. The majority of the land in the specific plan area is in a floodplain. This floodplain will be necessary to prevent flooding the river in the River Cove homes and downriver during an atmospheric river event. It acts as a safety valve. Be strong and do the right thing and save this Riverwalk farmland for our children and our descendants. There is an abundance of poor soils and wasteland in California for our nation and the developers to build houses on, like the Altamont Pass area, like the area east of Oakdale. There's also the large landmass area west of Patterson that Mr. was speaking about. That's wasteland over there. And the area east of Fairfield along Highway 12. We also have the entire states of Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and New Mexico for the developers to build houses on. Vote no and completely stop this proposed Riverwalk project. Please do what's best and right for our children and descendants. Thank you. It's our responsibility as adults to prepare for our children and descendants, and that's what we need to do. Vote no on this project. That's what your citizens want.
Thank you. Jennifer Whetstone? Jennifer Whetstone?
I was born in Oakdale in 1953. I now live on McHenry in Modesto, overlooking this proposed subdivision. One of my sisters is a resident of Riverbank, the River Heights area. She couldn't attend this meeting, but asked me to say that she drives to Escalon to work 5 days a week, and the traffic is already horrible during the morning and evening commutes. Adding possibly 1 or 2 vehicles per household from this proposed large subdivision would make the traffic congestion overwhelming, and traffic times and slowdowns are already horrendous. Building the Riverwalk subdivision would permanently destroy the fertile land and beautiful riparian habitat. There's plenty of land in the area much more suitable for homes that would not have such a risk of tragic flooding, such as the flooding we've seen the past week in Texas and New Mexico. The Riverwalk project calls for the creation of a new 5-lane road that would extend Coffee Road to McHenry Avenue just south of the bridge. I'm concerned about the significant amount of additional traffic this would add to McHenry Avenue and the loss of the existing 5-acre cherry orchard, which is immediately adjacent to my home. Lucky me. And the nesting habitat it provides for the Swainson hawk, which is a protected species. This area also currently has no ready public access, and to keep my property safe, if the project is approved, will require the construction of extensive fencing for protection all along our eastern border at the cost of thousands of dollars. This property should be maintained as ag land, which is its highest and best use. It also seems unsafe to propose only 2 main entrances or exits to such a large project that would be like a separate town all its own. In fact, you mentioned the downtown or something along that line area. It's like it's going to be, like you're saying, it's going to be its own little town. Let's see. And that we've seen the last year's devastating Southern California fires, how horrible it is to only have 1 or 2 entrances or exits from properties during a fire. The Riverwalk project calls for a new sewer pipe that would run under the Stanislaus River for 1.5 miles in order to reach the wastewater treatment plant. Wouldn't a safer environmental and quite possibly a less expensive option be to explore connecting to the city of Modesto's treatment facility? If so, I'm concerned that the council recently voted not to pursue a feasibility study to evaluate this alternate cost option. What kind of environmental pollution would result if piping under the river were to fail?
Bruce?
Much. Please vote no. Thank you.
What is the next thing?
Gavin Bruce?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your presentation earlier. We definitely need housing in this area. We need it in Modesto, we need it in Riverbank, Oakdale, Turlock, everywhere. But there's a way to do it, and this is not the way to do it. The way to provide housing and to preserve our open spaces in our farmland is through density, high density mixed use development. It also alleviates traffic because it makes public transit feasible when you have that many potential riders around a transit center. Just last week, the state had passed certain exemptions for CEQA for infill development. I believe it's 20 acres and less. All of our communities around this county and around the Central Valley should be prioritizing infill development and high density to meet the housing needs. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I have some concerns in this environmental impact report. It was a long document, so I may have missed it, but I didn't see anything mentioned about the future projections of climate change and how that's going to look in our area, especially in terms of flooding. So we are seeing right now diminishing snowpack in the Sierras. As that diminishes and we have warmer winters, every once in a while, we are going to have drought and continue having drought, but every once in a while, it's going to be punctuated by a year of heavy, heavy rainfall like we saw a few years ago, like we saw in 2017 and I think 2011. But in the future, as the snowpack diminishes, that precipitation is not going to fall as snow in the Sierras being held in that natural reservoir. It's all going to come down the mountain at the same time. So hearing that this levee, they're not sure what state it's in or not really sure who's going to maintain it, that is extremely alarming to me. And the impacts that could have if you all move forward with building this project. The other thing I just wanted to mention briefly is that it is important to maintain ag land in our open spaces in this county. We have youth right now who are completely severed from the earth. They don't know where their food comes from. Most kids, I used to work on a nutrition program. Most kids don't even know where peaches come from. They think it comes from a can in the store in the biggest agricultural area, in one of the biggest ones in the world. And that's shameful. We need to rebuild that connection between our youth and the earth. And I think this project is one of probably many future ones that are going to continue severing that connection. And I think that's really shameful as a region. I can also say that in Modesto, people don't want to grow out either. People in Modesto also want to grow up and not out. So I think there is room for conversation that way too, to build sustainably.
Thank you.
Pam Neeson? Pam Neeson?
Hi, I don't live in Riverbank. I am a lifelong resident of Escalon. What can I say? Everything has been said. Please vote no on this project. Think of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. You've got to think of the future and not just making money right now. We need to preserve riparian landscape. We need farmland. We don't need houses in those areas when there are plenty more practical areas to build. Thank you.
Thank you. Abe Souza?
Council members, commissioners, Madam Mayor, thank you for having this forum here for us. There have been some tough acts to follow. I don't know if I have anything particularly novel to add, but again, I appreciate being able to throw my 2 cents in. My name's Abe Souza. I've been a happy and proud resident of District 4 for the last 10 years and plan to remain so for as long as we can hold it out, meaning that we would be subject to the full burden of the effects of this development work to go forward. I love Riverbank, and I'm excited that our little city is growing. We do need to live up to our reputation as the city of action, after all. And nobody can reasonably deny that housing inventory and access to housing, especially affordable housing, is one of the preeminent issues that's facing us in this region and many others. This project does not sound like it will adequately address that issue for the buyers who are feeling those effects most profoundly. As was mentioned prior, the 3 registered voters in my household also signed the petition in favor of placing the Urban Limit Initiative on a ballot so that the residents of our city can exercise a more active role in determining our future. And having done so, the voters in Riverbank made it clear that they want the opportunity to vote on the Urban Limit Initiative before the city takes any further action on the Riverwalk project. I hope that you will take our voices into consideration, and I thank you all for your time and yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Annabelle Gammon?
Good evening. My name's Annabelle Gammon. Thank you, Council and Planning Commissioners, taking the time to give us a workshop. A lot has been said about many things tonight. I am going to, though, address one, the farmland and all of that. Everybody has mentioned it. But I'm going to address the biological resources, especially our speaker over here. I think your name's Steve, and you were the biologist that did the study at Riverwalk. Okay. I don't know if you have read my letter that our lawyer, OSHA Maserve, wrote for my husband and me. Attached to that is a very intensive, extensive study of a biologist who we hired. I'm sorry, I'm kind of unstable. His name is Dr. Sean Smallwood. I would like to ask if any of you have read our letter and that attachment. It is a very good study, and I really hope that you guys will take the time to read it. Because the draft EIR was very inadequately studied. And I'm sorry, what you said tonight, I grossly disagree with. And we can have a discussion about that if you would like. What we have in that river is something irreplaceable. We have endangered species. We have endangered plants. And tonight, it was mentioned by someone, the study of, Mr. Homer did, the Safe Passages study by the Davis. I have a copy. And I really hope that you will read it as well, because it talks about the river and about the animals and about the habitat and the aquifers and everything that we really should be focusing on. The draft EIR as a whole is an inadequate study, and I wish you just decided to recirculate it, actually, because it took a lot of time for us to study all of the pages there, and you too, and now we're gonna have to do the same. So actually, with all of the speakers tonight, you know what the problem is. And we are all members of this world. And we are all stakeholders, including you. We breathe the same air, we drive the roads. It is not really a good project and should be with really our conscience do not approve it.
Thank you, Annabelle.
Thank you.
Gretchen Brown. Gretchen Brown.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for having this forum tonight for all of us. I'm not really going to say anything new, I'll tell you that right off the bat, but my family has lived here since 1969. We live out at the end of Oakdale Road on the river. We have seen up close and personally 2 floods in 1970 and 1997. When they built River Cove, we thought it was going to be nuts. They're lucky that they're still there. When the river floods. I've watched Modesto grow from 39,000 people when we moved here to 218,000 now. We do need to grow. We do need the houses, I agree. We need to plan this responsibly. My neighborhood is on 2 wells. And when I read about the 2 million gallon water tank and 3 additional wells in this proposed Riverwalk, I was alarmed. My 2 wells in our neighborhood, which serves about 100 homes, has lost 25 feet of water in the last 9 years. That's significant. And I'm worried about where my water is going to be coming from in the next few years. That's something that's a concern. Jamie Edgar's brought up the maximum number of dwellings may be up to 5,000. This was the first time I heard about this. Is this true? I'd like some clarification on that. 5,000 homes is considerably different from 2,400. We're looking at massive amounts of traffic. It will not be a self-contained community. People have to go and see and do and what they're going to do. So it'd be nice to have some clarification on that, please. The wastewater treatment plant expansion. I live right across the river from the wastewater treatment plant. They've expanded it a little bit already and I can see it. The question was not answered. You said, is it going to expand or not? What you said, and I quote, is its permitted capacity allows for wastewater. Does that mean expansion or not? I'd like to know that because it will, I see this every day and I hear it every day. And the wind blows right onto our neighborhood every day. So this is something we think about. To someone's point, needs, desires, and practicality, do we need something like this? Yeah, probably. Not here. And we've all brought it up. We need it in other places, not in this particular spot. Do we desire it? Yeah, you guys do. That's fine. Of course, it'll be nice for the people that live there. Is it practical? Probably, but not in this location. We've got the east side. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Art Mitchell? Art Mitchell? You can fill out a comment card in the front. I still have other people waiting to call. Art Mitchell? Okay. Sorry, I didn't see you.
How you doing? My name's Art Mitchell. I live on Hogue Road. I overlook the project. Could be on both sides of this right here. A question for you guys. Do you need it or do you want it? I mean, I think that's a big question for Riverbank to answer. But the other side of that is right at the end of my driveway, I watch them bring out, I think they have pumpkins planted right now. But I mean, they bring out 2 to 3 million watermelons. I enjoy that. I watch them, enjoy them planting it, watch them pull it out. And I'm going to tell you, if you've never had a watermelon from there, you don't know what you're missing. But I understand, we have business folks that are looking into doing that. And I don't know why I really care about the project because most of us will be dead before it ever gets off the ground. But seems like an awful large project to me, but I know some of the people that are involved in it. They're good people. I think if it happens, it'll come off. But for me, I'd like to see the 800 acres stay where they are. I do ride the canals all the time on my four-wheeler, and there are areas that are impacted right now. The guys go down with their four-wheel drives, go fishing and do everything else. They have chairs set up and benches and fire pits. And, so that's something that I don't know if any of you have gone down the canal and checked that out. But anyway, that's my biggest question was, do you guys need it or do you want it? Seems like there's a lot of property around. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, could you name the second person that'll be coming up? That way people can mentally prepare.
So I have Karen Conrado next, and then after that, I have Brian Elliott. And then I'll call the next one if you guys want to have a heads up. Sharon Hollander?
No. Hi, my name is Karen Conrado. I
Sorry,
go on
Ms.
Hogue Road.
Conrado, can you please hold? I have Miss Karen Conrado going up now, then Brian Elliott, then Sharon Hollander.
Thank you.
I would like to address the levy that the Riverwalk developers are depending upon to keep floodwaters out of this floodplain land. The earlier geological maps show that the levee was in existence in the mid-1950s, about 75 years ago. The draft EIR included almost no information on the condition of the levee, how often it is inspected, when it was last inspected, who the responsible parties are for maintaining its integrity. Yet it is to play a significant role in the protection of the Riverwalk area. And I want to mention that that wasn't addressed again, except that it was mentioned that it wasn't researched. Specifically, it would now be expected to protect homes when it was constructed to only protect ag land, to protect crops from being flooded, not homes, not lives. not families. And remember, this is a designated floodplain. When the levee was constructed, it was not an Army Corps and construction project. Rather, it was a private project, so the state has no record of its construction, nor the maintenance of the construction, and is now riddled with gopher and squirrel holes. How can this be considered adequate protection for the proposed Riverwalk, for human lives, for families, and especially for slow-moving and easily confused advanced seniors, especially in a crisis such as flooding or fire? Don't dismiss the lack of recent flooding as indicative of the future. Recent reports indicate increased intensity and frequency of droughts and floods. I would like to remind you that an almost empty New Melones Dam was almost completely filled to capacity, even with releases. At that time of warm rains and melting snow, the Stanislaus River adjacent to the proposed Riverwalk was only feet and yards from the top of the levee. Can you imagine the destructive flooding of the proposed Riverwalk land had New Melones Dam been even half filled? A gruesome example of the power of flooding water was exemplified by the recent Texas floods in other states, nearby states with an unimagined speed, rapid destructive rise of floodwaters. The levee is only one example of the typical lack of research conducted by the developers of the proposed Riverwalk project, as many comments to the draft EIR illustrate specific information is lacking or vague. I beseech you, the Riverbank Planning Commission and City Council members, to read through the draft EIR itself, as well as the agencies and private assessments of the inadequacy of the developer's proposed plan. Please do not depend upon a political opinion to base your approval or disapproval on this proposed project that will change the quality of so many lives. There are many other subjects that, of course, we don't have time to discuss. I'm just going to run through them. The productive and prime ag land, floodplain, infrastructure, water rates, sewer, emergency services, sheriff, police, ambulance, fire and rescue, traffic, pollution, garbage, electricity, animal and plant wildlife corridors, the river habitat, Stanislaus River habitat, aquifers, water resources, SIGMA, schools and school districts, what was not even mentioned. But there'll be homes and there'll be schools, and that needs to be addressed because you don't want to have schools not be built. Thank you, Karen.
Ian Elliott?
Hello, my name is Brian Elliott. I live on the very northeastern edge of this property. A couple things. I sat where you sat back in the 2000s. I served with Bess. Nice to see you. We both look a little older though. Sorry. Here, a couple cautions here. My experience, I went through the initial groupie homes feeling of this. I was part of that 2007 master plan. So I've been through this process that you guys are going through right now. This is an intimidating project. That environmental impact report, I read it. I'm weird. I like to read stuff like that, but it's intimidating. Go slow, take your time, ask a lot of questions. I know you're doing that. I know you're taking this seriously. When I ride around the city, I see the things that Bess and I did well, and I see the things that we didn't, okay? The things we didn't, we rushed, all right? So caution, go slow. There's no hurry here, okay? So this land is not going anywhere. So be careful about it. A couple things about the environmental impact report, just on a specific note. I was surprised by the treatment of the wastewater treatment plant. So that's a lot more complex than you might think. These engineers, this consulting firm does not work for you. They do not work for the city, all right? They work for the developers. So take I'm not saying they're not doing their due diligence. However, they do not work for you. So be very critical of the analysis. I distinctly remember a report on the capacity of the treatment plant and then flooding of that treatment plant within days of a positive report. We dumped sewage into the river, all right? So that was after we had been assured of capacity. So ask a lot of questions, I live in the Went Ranch home. So my home abuts this area. It used to open up onto this area. Initially, the farmer could drive onto the property, Mr. Went. So the treatment of us along this border, we are not able actually even to vote for you. We can't, because we actually are prohibited. We're not in the city limits. We are in an area that doesn't allow us to vote. So we are actually voiceless in this process other than right now. Okay, so that has to be addressed too. We are an island. That will be worse if this is not addressed. Anyway, I encourage you to take your due diligence. I know you're going to do that. Go slow. All right, just a word of caution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sharon Hollander?
I think everything has been addressed, pretty much what I have to say. But I was raised on a farm and I live, I live in 6737 Woodhaven Place, Riverbank. And I did send a letter in to you guys with my neighbor. We wrote it together and signed it, and we never did receive any response from anybody. So I'm one of those 80, I guess, but I didn't receive a response. I live where I am, like on Woodhaven, which we have the fence line between Riverbank and Modesto. I guess that would be the fence line where the last, and I have the big almond orchard behind me, which the Riverwalk would probably be, I guess they would say the Riverwalk. So would people be walking against my fence? So I worry about that because, and Mr. Elliott, he's, I think, butted up against there too. We've been robbed before. We have had people jump our fence. We would have strangers walking that, if that is the walk, I'm not sure, but we would have strangers walking all through there. We have grandchildren. We have children that are in the backyards. So we worry about that with people behind us. I also worry about, and then what's going to happen to the wildlife? Because we have like they were saying, coyotes, birds, we have squirrels. I mean, we have wildlife from the river coming constantly by our house. They're always out there. And also, let's see what else. Oh, okay. So where I live, if the houses are behind me, are we going to have 2-story houses behind there? Because that really worries me. I mean, I'm flat for part of my yard and then it goes up the hill and it's a pretty big hill. So are we going to have people with 2-story houses behind us looking down into our yards and stuff? Because that really bothers me. I've been a resident there for 28 years. We built our home. So we've lived here for 28 years. And what really bothers me, if this should go through, which I hope to God it doesn't, that they would build any 2-story houses and be close to us where they would see down into our yards and we'd have no privacy. And all these years we've had nothing but, it's beautiful, it's quiet, there's no noise, it's very peaceful in our neighborhood. It's a very, it's a very nice neighborhood. So please vote no on this project or do something to help the residents who live on that fence line so that we don't have people looking into our yards or close to us. Leave space or something between us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Mitchell? And then I have Craig S. after that.
Hi, I'm Linda Mitchell and I live on Hogue Road. When I bought our property on Hogue Road about 20 years or 21 years ago, I went down to the county planning commission and Ron Freitas was the planner or whatever. And he said, oh, you're lucky. He said that 800 acres is in an agricultural trust and it will never be built. Within 5 years, I think it was Groupie that started, and we've been going through this for a long time. But I don't think Ron lied to me. I guess you can buy out an agricultural trust. I'm not sure. And then also, you have us in the sphere of influence now on Hogue Road. I bought in Modesto. I'd like to keep my address. And if you put me in the sphere of influence, does that mean I'm going to be in Riverbank and I'm going to have to change my address? Yes. And I really don't want to do that. So anyway, another thing is Riverwalk. How deceiving a name is that? It sounds like it's going to be just a beautiful walk on the river. And I've had a lot of people say, when they come down McHenry, they say, why is anybody opposed to a river walk? Well, it's really not a river walk. It's a housing development. And I think that the word Riverwalk is deceiving. But anyway, thank you.
Craig S. Craig F. Aaliyah Waffle Brown.
Hi, my name is Aaliyah. And my name is Avi. And we do not support the Riverwalk project. My family and I moved here in 2021, I think August. And ever since we moved here, this is like the best town we've ever been in. It's a really great town. And I'd just like to say that my sister and I would like to represent the young men and women in this wonderful community that do not want this project to go through. I just want to know, have the statistics been ran on how the traffic will go up, how the sewer rates will go up, and how much money we'll have to pay? And I know that my family will not have enough water. We are a family of 5, and we will not have enough water if it is 90 gallons per day. Can I say something? Oh, and there's already enough traffic because of the Costco, and that's going to go up a lot, especially if this project is put through. And I know a lot of kids my age have enough struggles going from home to school and back because of the traffic. And if a lot of more families move in here, there's not going to be enough, there's going to be more time to get from home to school and back. Please consider not putting this through. Can I say something? Yeah.
Also, the crime rate could go up as well as our houseless population, because more houses will be being brought in, more businesses, and that'll bring in more people looking for places to stay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Renee Snow. Renee Snow. Oh. And then I have Giselle Pritchard after that. And Rosa Medrano after that.
Hi there, I'm Renee Snow, and I'm a resident of Escalon, and I have family here in Riverbank on Park Ridge. I'm here to express my strong concern about the proposed project. While the EIR claims that the project is not growth-inducing, I respectfully disagree. It is clear that this development will increase traffic congestion in our community and place additional pressure on our existing infrastructure. Escalon is a small, close-knit town, and unplanned or excessive growth threatens the quality of life that residents value. I urge you not to approve this project. Please listen to the voices of your concerned residents and prioritize smart, responsible planning that reflects the true impacts this project will have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Giselle Pritchard. Giselle Pritchard. Oh, all right, thank you.
Good evening. I've been a resident of the city of Riverbank, District 3 since 1998. In 1999, my sewer bill was $20. My latest sewer bill was $162. That's an 800% increase so far. I'm opposed to the proposed Riverwalk development because I'm very concerned that it will impose even greater sewer and other fees, increasing on our existing Riverbank residents. I am also the secretary of the Modesto Rifle Club. Now, do we make noise? Yeah, we do. The club submitted timely comments on the DEIR regarding noise and mitigation measures that the developer proposes to install on the club property. In its comments, the club observed that the developer's preferred noise mitigation alternative is not feasible because it would block all vehicular access, including fire, police, and medical vehicles, to the northern portion of the club's property. I want to advise everyone concerned with this project. The developer has not contacted the club in response to our comments, and we would certainly appreciate if someone would. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Rosa Medrano next, and then Ms. Halpert, and then Mr. Romano.
Hello, my name is Rosa Medrano. I've been a resident of Riverbank for 80 years. My first home where my father bought property was across the street. My brothers used to go to, I'm going to talk about the river, not your development. But at the end, your development will be, I will speak about that. Anyway, my brothers used to go to the river, catch salmon. They were this big. They'd come home and put them in tubs. My mother would make soup out of the heads and eat the bodies. Yes. There was also red fox, bears, and deer, and other. We used to have a lot of pheasants around here. Have you ever seen a pheasant here? No. They're beautiful birds. On Roselle, after the Cardozo School bought my dad out, he bought the land on Roselle. We used to have pheasants that used to come there and lay their eggs. And then down the road on Roselle, the boys used to go hunting for pheasants because it was legal at that time. Now I'm going to talk about the river. When Riverbank first started, they had a ferry that came across from Escalon to Riverbank. Then they made the covered bridge. The covered bridge, after so many years, it deteriorated. So Riverbank decided to make the bridge, which now stands. It's higher on the ground, off the ground because of the floods. Now, from this bridge in Riverbank to the bridge by your development, how many miles is it? Can you tell me? Is it less than 5? I believe so. We have another bridge on the Stanislaus River, excuse me, and it's in Oakdale. They also made their bridge higher, taller, because of the water that was underneath. Then we have the Orange Blossom Bridge, and that's also taller than it used to be. Then we have the Knights Ferry Bridge. That's right in Knights Ferry. And then above that, we have the covered bridge, which was redone because it was falling apart in 1980, in the 80s. A man from Connecticut came to redevelop, to refix it. Now, in 1950, that was the big flood that washed out the wooden bridge that we have here in Riverbank, which we don't have anymore.
Thank you, Rosa.
And it was over 10 feet.
Who do we have next? About that.
Evelyn Halbert.
Thank you, Rosa. We appreciate your comments.
Go ahead, Ms.
Rick,
Halbert. Ms. Rosa.
we have the next comment. You can contact us with the email. Thank you. Evelyn, you can approach the microphone. Thank you. Thank you, Rosa.
I live in downtown Riverbank. My family's been here 4 generations. And I'm opposed to this project. However, I heard a comment tonight that I did not see anywhere on the plan or on the EIR regarding downtown. I did not know that we were kind of part of this project, but you made a comment that the downtown core, which is the center of the downtown Pacific plan and the downtown historical district down here, was going to provide the amenities for your project. The amenities would be down here. You made that comment. I didn't see anything in there anywhere we did not get any notices down here or anything that I know of anybody got about it. But I would like to know, what are these amenities that you're going to provide here in the downtown core? How are you, and you haven't done anything as far as looking at the impacts to us for providing whatever these amenities are, like traffic, like parking. And I know the planning commission is aware that every time they get a project down here, they're giving away parking spaces in the residential because there's no parking for the project that's coming in. It should have been in the plan. Yeah, we should have had a notice. We should have had a chance to comment on this to find out what the impacts and stuff were. But we were totally left out. So I would really like to know what these amenities are and how it's going to impact us, and why you're putting us in as part of your plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Lon.
Mr. Romano?
Thank you. Mayor, Council, Planning Commissioners, Dave Romano. I'm the representative of the Riverwalk team. I just want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for taking this public comment. I think that the more comments we get, the better. The more information we get, the better. The more questions that are asked, the better. On behalf of our design team, we promise we'll do our best to answer every question. We won't necessarily answer them all satisfactorily, but we'll do our best to respond, make sure we reach out to people who have very specific questions. Mrs. Bolender left, but I had an opportunity to respond to her. She has people that walk behind her house. There will be a house behind her. We actually designed it so there wouldn't be two houses, that the fences would match her fences. So I think there's a lot of information we'll be able to get out, especially to neighbors and to people that are going to be next to this. That will at least help them understand the project better. So anyway, we thank you for the opportunity. We look forward to the continued process, and we want to thank your staff for all the hard work they've put in, because 4,500 pages is a lot of pages to generate. It's a lot of pages to review. But this is what I do for a living. It is not out of the ordinary. This is the state of California. And when you hear people talk about CEQA and what CEQA means and what the courts require us to do, is very typical that you see projects that have this magnitude and this volume of paper. So we believe your staff's doing a good job of responding to those issues. We'll do our best job to respond to them as well. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Byron Six? Byron? Byron, and then I have Yolanda Magana, and then lastly, Danielle Banning.
Good evening. I'm kind of new here to Riverbank. I've been here 21 years. Hey, one thing they didn't say, I know everybody said everything the right way and the correct. What you don't understand is the new development, what's going to go on, is that Airbnb is starting to flood Riverbank. I got two people that rent their house out of Airbnb, and it's becoming a problem. You get the youngsters in there, they doing donuts, they doing all this right now. I'm in Crossroads. Clarabelle's become a racetrack. These new developments, people come here, they buy the homes here, they move back, they stay in their area, they rent them out for Airbnb. Airbnb has taken over Riverbank. It's becoming a big problem. I sleep at night. We got one lady over across, the guy across on the end over there. He rent his Airbnb out every weekend. They party all night, and I would knock on the door. Man, you need to cut this down. Well, we rent this place. We having fun here. You call the officer, they don't come. Like I talked to the gentleman over there. You guys gonna need a police department here now. It ain't gonna be just sheriff. You're gonna need Riverbank Police Department, because the Airbnb is destroying Riverbank. I come from Oakland, Bay Area, to move here, been quiet. When I first moved here, this is the quietest place. All these homes you see new, I make all the materials. I work at Simpson Strong Tie. I supply every Home Depot in the world and Lowe's. I make all the construction materials to build every house here. My house have all the materials I built, but it's becoming a problem. You guys got to see this. The Airbnb that come in here, it should be a law. When you come Airbnb, you should have restrictions on that. At a certain time, you cut it down. These people is partying all night. They get in their cars, they get drunk, they race down Clarabelle. It's becoming a racetrack.
Thank you.
Ms. Yolanda Magana?
I wasn't gonna say anything. I've been in my house 50 years. I want my kids to live the same way I live. We knew all our neighbors. I can take my grandson on his little scooter. We go around the community center. This is a small town. When they have the Christmas parade, we walk that way. Everything that goes on here, we're walking around. There's very few towns that you say, hey, you know what, you guys? And they go, oh, we don't do that. What do you mean you don't do that? Well, we don't do that. I said, I go across the street at the community center. They have bazaars. They go, no, we don't do that. I want Riverbank to stay Riverbank. I don't like that these people are gonna lose everything. This little river, my son, I had a stroke. My ex would go down there. I graduated out of Riverbank High. And like I said, my house is there. I've been there 50 years in that house. I don't have to go someplace else. With the kids, her mother babysat one of my grandkids. I mean, it's everybody around. And then you guys are building all this. Somebody wants to get rich on. You're getting rich off of the people that live here. I think that's just totally wrong. My 3 kids live here in Riverbank. They own their houses. They graduated from Riverbank High. I graduated out of Riverbank High. And all this is gonna be gone. It's gonna be awful that I say, oh, I can't go to the community center because we have too many people growing up. I go to Modesto, my daughter takes me and we go to Costco and we're there waiting forever. She goes, Mom, there's too many people. And the same thing with here, it's gonna be bigger people, more people. That's all.
Thank you.
Danielle Banning?
Good evening, council members, commissioners. My name's Danielle Banning. I'm a resident here in Riverbank. I'm actually a fairly new resident. We've been here just almost 2 years. I made the active choice to move to Riverbank with my daughter to provide her the kind of lifestyle that I wished I got to have growing up. Small community, the same, same elementary school, middle school, high school with the same group of kids. And that's kind of a small town dream that not a lot of people get to live, especially these days. So I grew up in Modesto and I made the choice to come to Riverbank because it's just big enough with a small town lifestyle feel. Now I try not to leave Riverbank. My nail salon's in Riverbank, my hair salon's in Riverbank, I grocery shop in Riverbank. I love all of our small businesses, Pizza Plus, the different restaurants. I try to put everything I have back into Riverbank because I chose to live here and I chose to I'm choosing to raise my daughter here. So from my perspective, is there going to be growth? Absolutely. And it's ridiculous to think that we can avoid that. I think that I'm not going to say anything that these other ladies and gentlemen haven't already said. I don't think that this plan is the right plan for us. I don't think it's the right place. And you guys know that. You've heard what everyone's had to say. I'm not going to badger it into you guys anymore. I'm sure you've been hearing enough of that. My biggest point is that I'm trying to raise my daughter I'm leading by example, and I want her to be able to see me take my civic duty and vote on something that all of us feel passionately about. Clearly, there's passion behind this project on each side, and I love that. I love being able to hear all the research and what everyone's done. It's It's amazing. And I want to be able to, like everyone else has said, I have 3 voters in my household. And I'd like us to be able to have the opportunity to vote on I can't remember what the initiative is, what the name is, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I moved here. My sister, who has also 3 registered voters in her home, live 1 street over from me. We're in District 2. We'd like the opportunity to have our voices heard. I'm the cumulative representative who got to come in here tonight, but we would like to have our voices heard. That's why we're registered voters, and that's why we elected you guys to listen to us and to hear what we have to say. And like I said, I'm not going to say anything novel. I'm not going to say anything new. You've heard how your community feels about this project and how they feel it should be handled. And I really hope that you guys were listening and respect our decisions and what we want as a community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, we just have 2 cards. These were names I called earlier, but they did not come up. Irene Lopez and Craig Smith. So that is all that we have for public comment cards. I will state for the record, we did not receive any submitted written comments prior to 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Thank you. And truly thank you all, and I hope you can share with the folks that left by now that we really appreciate the public engagement. Many things were mentioned tonight that both stand alone and that intersect with the city's processes. And so today was an opportunity that we wanted to offer to have a conversation and to learn more about what's going on in the city. So we hope to continue the conversation. The next planning commission meeting is Tuesday, July 15th at 6 p.m. And the next city council meeting is Tuesday, July 22nd at 6 p.m. And we are going to be back at the city council chambers. So this meeting is now adjourned.